Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian is here. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Boy, I tell you, did you stay up for the Preds game last night?
I did.
You made it the whole way through.
I did. I didn't go to sleep until 12:30.
Oof. The first period bored me to tears. The second period was freaking wild. And then I ended up falling asleep in between the second and third period. I couldn't stay up for the third period. The late night LA game and the ESPN broadcast. I'm sorry. It is a freaking snooze fest listening to the ESPN people call the game. And I know I could have just synced it up with, Pete and Hal, but I don't know, have the apps that get pause the TV or I got whatever. Not totally sure I can do that. So we're starting this today. I watched the Preds game last night. In the middle of the Preds game, it was announced that the Titans had completed their virtual interview with Bobby Slowick, the Texans' offensive coordinator. Yes, sir. All right. Bobby Slowick, come on down. And then I woke up this morning, and I found out that the Titans' head coaching search is, in fact, over. And you want to know how I know that the Titans head coaching search is over? I mean, I know they interviewed Brian Johnson today. I think it was a virtual interview. They just, in fact, sent out the email a couple of minutes ago. Let's see. Was it a virtual interview? Nope. Just says it was a regular one. So they interviewed Brian Johnson today, and they'll continue with the interviews. And I think they're supposed to interview Aaron Glenn today of the Lions. But the coaching search is over. And you're going to say, wait a minute. What do you mean the coaching search is over, Jared? We haven't seen a tweet from Ian Rappaport, or we haven't seen Diana Rossini or anybody say that the coaching search is over. It's over because Adam Schefter this morning at 6:04 a.m. tweeted out, quote, former Stanford head coach David Shaw, who interviewed Thursday to become the Chargers head coach, will interview this weekend to become the Titans head coach, per source. This will be Shaw's third NFL coaching interview in the past year, along with the Broncos in 2023. Guys, David Shaw is not going to be the next coach of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I have no idea who they're hiring, but I am going to tell you that David Shaw interviewing for the job is essentially the white smoke coming from St. Thomas Sports Park. Now, they're not ready to tell us who it is, and I don't know who it is. But I know it is over. Here are the rules when it comes to these coaching searches, which is why, again, David Shaw is a tell that the coaching search is over. In order to hire a head coach, an NFL team, per the Rooney Rule, must interview 2 external minority candidates before they can fill their job. So again, an internal candidate doesn't count. They could interview Terrell Williams 18 times, and it does not matter. It has to be an external candidate. And they have to be 2, and they have to be in person. David Shaw, an external minority candidate. That is why the Titans are interviewing David Shaw, in my opinion, is because the Titans have decided who they're going to hire, and they're ready to move. And they can't officially move until after the divisional round of the playoffs, especially if a guy that they want to hire is Bobby Slowick, who's coaching this weekend. And if they win, then they'll wait. And they'll wait. If it's not Bobby Slowick and it's one of these other guys on another team, then that guy loses or that guy's not playing like a Brian Callahan. And then, hey, we've already got the 2 external minority candidates done. Bring Johnny in for an interview in person. We liked what we heard over Zoom. We like what we see in person. The agent and the team have already worked out a deal. Boom, boom, boom. Now let's get a staff together and get on to the Senior Bowl. That's what this is. So I don't know who the Titans are going to hire. I don't know if it's Slowick. I don't know if it's Callahan. I don't know if it's Thomas Brown. I don't know if it's Jared Stillman. I don't know who's going to be the next coach. But I do know that they have decided. And I don't have a problem with this. Because up until this point, the Titans have been able to do Zoom interviews. Those are quote-unquote virtual interviews which technically don't count towards the standing of, the Rooney Rule and everything else. But you can get just as much from a Zoom interview as you can from an in-person interview. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are going to roll their eyes at me saying that, or they're going to say, that's not true, Jared. I want to look a man in the eye, and I want to shake his hand, and I want to feel him, and I want to know him, and I get that. And I'm not saying that whoever it is the Titans are planning to hire, they shouldn't also get to know when they bring that guy in. But what happens with everything, think of this like the NFL draft. The NFL draft doesn't have any standard for interviewing candidates, the number amount of players that you have to interview. It's not like you go to the combine and they say, hey, you have to interview 17 offensive linemen. Basically, it's just, here's all the college players, rank them however you want to rank them, and pick them, and you got to compete with the other teams, and then once you've picked your guy, announce it to everybody. That's really how it works. So my guess is, like the draft, the Titans probably had a board that said, hey, here are the guys that we want to be our next coach. And they probably did this before they fired Mike Vrabel, because it wouldn't be very smart to fire Mike Vrabel and then just say, screw it, we'll find somebody. You can do that with Ken Wisenhunt. You're not doing that with Mike Vrabel. So they probably had a board in their heads, in the facility, wherever, that was, hey, this is who our next head coach is going to be. One of these 6 guys. And we'll take these 6 guys over Vrabel. And then it's like, okay, well, now let's interview them. Let's get to know them. And if we interview them and their plan, they get on Zoom with us and they say, hey, Will Levis stinks, I don't want him. Well, go ahead, cross that guy off the list. But you can tell from a Zoom interview whether or not this guy is going to be a match for what you're looking for. I mean, I remember, again, I think I've told this story before, but I went to Ryan Porth, who was our program director at the time, and I said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Floyd Reese is retired. I'm doing the show by myself every day. This is what we're looking for. It was somebody who could kind of be that sidekick role, not the pure former ex-player, general manager, co-host, whatever. It's somebody that we can develop, somebody that we can kind of, a blank canvas, who's smart, who works hard, who's all these things. Caroline sent in a resume. It had Fitz on it. Ryan talked to Fitz. Ryan did an interview with Caroline on Zoom. I talked to Caroline on Zoom. I knew after I talked to Caroline on Zoom, I knew we were going to hire Caroline. Now, we brought her in and everything else, but I knew we were going to hire her. You can get that vibe. Now, I am a little surprised that the Titans are going this route, because David Shaw, and I know Adam Schefter, and I heard him this morning on Sirius talking about David Shaw, like, he might be a real candidate for these jobs. No. In 2014, if you had interviewed David Shaw for one of these jobs, that could have been viewed as a realistic interview. Right now, David Shaw is not a candidate in the NFL. Not a real candidate. The Chargers aren't going to hire him. The Broncos were not going to hire him last year. So I didn't think that they would go this route, in all seriousness. Because when you see teams like the Raiders, for instance, who interviewed Chris Richard, the former Seahawks defensive coordinator, and Leslie Frazier, the former interim coach, defensive coordinator, all around the league at different stops, I think last with the Bills, when you see the Raiders interview those guys, it's like, okay, they're doing their 2 external minority candidate interviews so that they can just turn around and say, Antonio Pierce, our new head coach. Because we know who the Raiders are going to hire. Same with the Chargers. The Chargers interviewed David Shaw, and they interviewed Leslie Frazier. Because we know that once they get their money or power structure or whatever it is that they're negotiating with Jim Harbaugh out of the way, they're going to announce Jim Harbaugh as their head coach. So I didn't think the Titans would go this route. I thought the Titans were going to bring in serious candidates, to interview for in person, even if it was a Rooney Rule interview, even if they knew who they were going to hire, only because the Titans are currently caught up in that Brian Flores NFL Ray Horton lawsuit. And I figured they didn't want any view of impropriety when it came to the Rooney Rule. But I guess the Titans have zeroed in on who they want, And instead of worrying about the optics of who it's going to be and the optics of what everybody thinks about how they went about searching for this and what could be said in court or arbitration or whatever it may be, the Titans have said, hey, this is the guy we want. And since this is the guy we want, let's get right in there right now and let's get that guy hired. Now, I don't know who it's going to be. I do not know. There are about 2 candidates that I think have a legitimate opportunity to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and I couldn't tell you one way or another how they feel about these 2 candidates. What I do know is that they've decided. They've decided. Whatever it may be, they know exactly what they want. I guess, again, I thought that they had to wait until after this weekend to be able to do an in-person interview with Brian Johnson. So, again, the Eagles' offensive coordinator. It says in here, again, it just says an interview with Brian Johnson. It doesn't say a virtual interview with Brian Johnson. So if that is an in-person interview with Brian Johnson, then that would be one external minority candidate. And then David Shaw would be number 2. And then as early as Sunday, they could hire the next Titans head coach. So head on a swivel, folks, because they've made up their mind. I think this thing's going to go pretty quickly. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. And coming up next, I've got it down to 2. I don't want to say certain, but I've got it down to 2 people I think the Titans are zeroing in on for their head coaching job. And I can make a case, not based upon who they are or what I think of them as candidates, but just based on what we know. I think I can narrow it down to the 2. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. 615-737-1025. We've got Vandy basketball this weekend. Tomorrow, 94.9 The Fan has Vandy men's basketball on the road at Mississippi State. Tip-off at 2:30. Pregame is at 2. And on Sunday on 94.9 The Fan, we've got women's basketball. The Red Hot Commodores will be on the road taking on Tennessee. That's right, rivalry game right there. Pregame begins at 1:45. Tip-off is at 2. And coverage for both available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
If Slowick is offered the job to come to Tennessee, do you think he would take it and become the Titans' next head coach?
I have no idea because everybody wants to talk to him, just about everybody. And he has background with Rand Cawthorn, of course. He also has 6 years with Adam Peters, the new GM from Washington. And Washington is where Bobby started his NFL coaching career under Mike Shanahan, and where he became really good friends with Kyle Shanahan. Then Bobby, like DeMeco Ryans, went to be part of Kyle Shanahan's first staff with the 49ers in 2017. People here are already making plans to lose him. And I go back to what DeMeco Ryans, Ben Johnson, the Lions, Kevin O'Connell for the Vikings. They all had interviews and decided they needed a second year as a coordinator to get more experience.
There you go. That was John McClain today on Chase and Big Joe. And again, Chase, great question. John's in Houston. He knows Bobby Slowick. Says, hold on. So if Slowick gets offered this job, will he take it? John says he doesn't know. And then John's been saying this. You know, I love John with all my heart. He's the guru. But he's been saying this a lot about, well, you know, maybe he's not ready. Maybe he goes back to the Texans. I'm like, goes back to the Texans? Why would he go back to the Texans? But I think the Titan search is over because the David Shaw interview this weekend is a legitimate, in my opinion, it screams Rooney Rule. And they only are doing that because they want to move quickly. Just like the Chargers and the Raiders have done that because they want to move quickly. So I tweeted on Saturday that I felt like the Titan search was going in the direction of Brian Callahan or Bobby Slowick. And did you see what Darren said, Ian, to me?
No.
Darren was like, this is the most CYA tweet ever, so you can say you were right. I'm like, first of all, I'm going to say I'm right, whichever guy they end up picking. But, like, I mean, that wasn't why I tweeted it. I just felt like it was going in that direction. And I am convinced that as we sit right here at 2:19 p.m. on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, January 19th, I am convinced that they've landed one of the two. See, again, this is like politics. You only go to the floor if you know you have the votes. You know you have the votes before you actually vote, right? This is not an election, for instance, where everybody goes in, closes the curtain, and presses a button, and then we all sit there and wait for the results. This is like a vote in the Senate where it's like they know they have the votes or they know they don't have the votes. So, yes, everybody interviews and, you know, let's get them on Zoom and let's talk to them. Yeah, got any questions for you? That is real. But as far as the actual placing and the coming and the going and the money and the length and everything else, those coaches have agents, and you have a general manager. And so those things are discussed through the back channels. And so right now, like, I am convinced that the Chargers have not landed Jim Harbaugh yet, but they know. Just like I am convinced that the Falcons have not landed Bill Belichick yet, but they know. And that's where I think the Titans are. And I can't pick which one it is. Like, I can't zero in and say, okay, it's definitely Callahan or it's definitely Slowick. Because there are two sets of circumstances here that could lead me to one or the other. The first, let's start with Slowick. The Titans interviewed Slowick last night. David Shaw, again, it was reported, was going to interview with the Titans, and it was reported at 6:04 a.m. by Adam Schefter. Slowick, I want to say was, what time did they announce Bobby Slowick? I got it in my email here. I'm going to say that they announced the Bobby Slowick completion of the interview at like 10 o'clock at night last night. So it was late. And again, he's got work. 8:46 is when the Titans sent out the email saying they completed the interview with Bobby Slowick. So chances are they probably did the interview last night. It was probably a 3-hour, 4-hour interview. All kinds of questions, breaking it down, and then they sat there as a group and they talked. So again, we talked to Bobby. Bobby, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Good luck this weekend, even though, you know, we don't really like the Texans around here. Good luck. And you know, we'll be in touch. And then he exits the Zoom meeting, and then they sit in the conference room and they say, all right, what'd you think? And so for them to decide, right, it is incredibly feasible to me that they could have sat there and said, okay, Bobby's the guy. Rand, you said he was your number one choice. We talked to his agent. We think that we've got a really good shot. Bobby's the guy. They're going to lose tomorrow to the Ravens. And so when they do, and as soon as that window opens next week, let's bring Bobby in. Let's get it done. And Bobby's our coach, and we're not going to let Washington, they're going to have to take their time with their committees and everything else they've got there. And so let's just go get Bobby. I could see that. The other reason Callahan is a possibility is because he interviewed last week, and the Titans immediately scheduled a follow-up in-person interview. And so it's like, that seems a little serious, right? We haven't heard of anybody else getting a follow-up interview. Now, again, Mike McDonald is playing. Antonio Pierce with the Raiders. It feels like he's going to be named their head coach. And if he's not named their head coach, I don't know how they're going to field a football team next year. So I don't know if they're going to try to bring it. But again, the only name we know that they have scheduled a follow-up with is Brian Callahan. So I could see the Titans doing the virtual interview with Callahan on Friday. And again, I go back to the fact that it's obvious the Titans have a coaching board. And they're like, all right, here are our top candidates. I could see them being wowed by Callahan last Friday or Thursday or whatever day it was he did the interview. Sat down and said, we really like Brian, but let's see what our other top candidates have to say. Bobby does the interview yesterday. They don't like the interview from Bobby Slowick, and they say, okay, Callahan's our guy. And then it's like, Rand's probably already talked to the agent. They've probably already got an agreement, hey, if this is how much money we're going to pay you, this is how much we're going to this. If it leaks out at all that we're even thinking this, it's 88 and out the gate. Like, we're done. And when you do things like that, people keep it quiet. And then I could see them say, okay, we did the interview with Bobby. We didn't like it. We're bringing Callahan in next week. We've already talked to the agent. Get David Shaw in the air. Get him into Nashville. Let's sit him down and cross that off our list. So in the case of each guy, there is like a certain, like from a logistical standpoint, that points in their direction. And so I think it's down to those two. I couldn't tell you who. Obviously, I'm rooting for Slowick. I do like Callahan, so I'm not going to complain about that if he's the guy. But it looks like it is pointing in the direction of one of those two guys. I will take either. I prefer Bobby. The difference, though, between me and them is that they've talked to these guys. I have not. So it would be really hard for me when it comes to, we've decided Brian Callahan over Bobby Slowick, for me to say, why would you do that? I haven't talked to these guys. And these guys aren't going to talk to me because I'm not offering them an $8 million a year job. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 into the text line. Chris from Knoxville says, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, it's going to be Bobby Slowick. It better be Bobby Slowick, Chris from Knoxville says. I mean, don't we have to, and I don't trust the Titans as much as I used to. And when I say trust, I mean trust their judgment. I mean, I also don't completely trust them to tell the truth, but I trust them to tell the truth a lot more right now than I would say that I trust their judgment. So when it comes to who they're going to hire or whatever, I am skeptical that they would be able to glean from an interview whether or not somebody is a complete bozo or not. But I would say this. I want Bobby Slowick, and it sounds like you in the text line, you want Bobby Slowick too. But if they did that interview last night and Bobby Slowick was a booger-eating bozo, then you have to say, hold on, let's take it back. And I reserve the right to have something like that happen. I was told by somebody I trust in Kansas City that when they hired, when the Bengals hired Zach Taylor, that job was Eric Bieniemy's. That he went and interviewed. They were going to hire Bieniemy. It was the worst kept secret. And Eric Bieniemy goes to Cincinnati, interviews for the job, and apparently bombed. Meanwhile, Zach Taylor, somebody else they were interested in, let's see, aced it. And that the Bengals brass, and again, I don't trust their judgment either, but the Bengals brass sat there and said, we can't hire Bieniemy after that interview, considering how good Taylor's interview was. So that could have happened with Slowick, where they interviewed him last night. They thought as highly of him as I do, as you in the text line do, and then they said, I don't know. They sat down with him, said, what do you think of Will Levis? He said, I'm not a fan. And it's like, well, okay, this is probably not going to work out. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Apparently the Titans have an interview today, but I'm not sure that this interview, I like the guy, I do, and if I wasn't in the current mental state I'm in right now, I would consider him, but I don't think the Titans are considering him, and I don't think they should be. And the optics of him interviewing today, given the fact that I think they've already decided their search, we'll see. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Breaking news, this coming from Adam Schefter. The Raiders are working to finalize a deal to hire Antonio Pierce as their head coach. Per sources, the Raiders made Pierce their interim head coach on Halloween night and are now closing in on making it a full-time job. So later in the show, we are planning to do our official coaching carousel predictions for this cycle, as we also await the white smoke in Philadelphia as to whether or not they're going to keep Nick Sirianni. But we did have Antonio Pierce on the coaching carousel. So, Ian, go ahead and give it to me.
Raiders.
Antonio Pierce.
Got
it looks
one.
like we got, I guess. I mean, we didn't do it yet, but he is going to be named the head coach. And again, this backs up my initial point, which was today. This coaching search for the Titans is over. Because once you're interviewing minority external candidates who you know are not going to get the job, and we know David Shaw is not getting the job, it's because you are going to move quickly. That's why you're doing it. The Raiders, and again, I appreciate everything that the Rooney Rule stands for. I think it is really disheartening how guys can interview for jobs and not know in their head if they're actually interviewing for the job. My entire life, I think I've interviewed for like 4 jobs. And in the 4 times I've interviewed for a job, I have never thought the guy or gal on the other side of the table had an ulterior motive for why I was there. And so I totally think that that is so screwed up. And so I appreciate the intentions of the Rooney Rule, but the execution of it is kind of clunky. And in the case of the Raiders, they interviewed Chris Richard and Leslie Frazier, got that out of the way. They were never going to hire either guy, but they get that out of the way so that they can name Antonio Pierce their head coach. And the Raiders had no choice in this. The players had come out and said, we want him as the coach. The players, Max Crosby said over the weekend he was going to demand a trade if they didn't make Antonio Pierce the coach. And quite frankly, as far as credibility is concerned, I mean, there's a good chance, I don't know, there's a chance that Mark Davis doesn't actually like Antonio Pierce the most for the head coaching job. But if he does that, he'd lose his team. Like, the team would mutiny if they didn't make him the coach, because Mark Davis has lost his credibility after the Rich Bisaccia, Josh McDaniels fiasco. And so that's for good cause. But again, this just proves my point that the teams that have gone out of their way to get the Rooney Rule out of the way are all because they've made up their mind. The Raiders did it. They made up their mind on Pierce. The Chargers did it because I think they've made up their mind on Harbaugh. And now the Titans are doing it because they're interviewing David Shaw, who has absolutely, positively no chance to get that job. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Ian, could you imagine if it gets announced the Titans are hiring David Shaw as their next head coach?
That would be wild.
That would be freaking wild. 615-737-1025. One texter says, the teams have to wait until the candidate is officially eliminated from the playoffs to schedule a second interview. If not, then one would think that Brian Callahan is the top choice. So I believe, and I talked yesterday with somebody who would know about the rules, and then I looked them up again. And it's still hard for me to remember all of the intricacies of the rules. I believe that Bobby Slowick, for instance, could be interviewed in the bye week between the Super Bowl and the conference championship games, and they could bring him into Nashville during that week. But yes, you have to wait for the team to stop playing before you can start flying guys in.
That is correct.
Yeah. So they could interview him in the week before the Super Bowl. So they could not do an in-person interview with Slowick until they lose to the Ravens tomorrow. Which, by the way, let me just say this. I know everybody across the country is talking about Chiefs-Bills and the 9th rematch between those two in the playoffs, and this one finally being in Buffalo, which I am happy about it being in Buffalo. I am far more interested in the Texans and the Ravens game. And I'm interested in both of them. I am really excited about these AFC playoffs, but I am fascinated by the Texans and the Ravens. Like, this is a big moment for C.J. Stroud, and it's a huge moment for Lamar because Lamar has been through it and done everything you can do in the NFL except win big in the playoffs, and this is his best chance since the Titans went in there and slugged him right in the jaw. And so add in Slowick and him against Mike McDonald in that like that, I am freaking pumped to watch that game tomorrow. And I guess I kind of hope. I mean, I don't know who I'm rooting for because I kind of hate both teams. I guess I'll root for the Ravens just because it would give the Titans the ability to turn around and if Bobby Slowick is their preferred candidate, bring him in and get him hired. Texter into the text line says, Slowick or bust, I feel like they had already decided this before firing Vrabel. You know, Corey Curtis, and he's going to be on the show like he is every Friday. Corey Curtis tells a story. And I believe that this comes from Mike Mularkey, but Corey didn't say that. So the story comes from Corey, but I think that it really comes from Mike Mularkey, but I don't know. That in that 2017 season, the last year Mularkey was here, the Titans won their 12th game to go to 8-4. It was a game, I don't know if you guys remember this, Jadeveon Clowney was trash talking on the sidelines to LaShawn Sims, the corner, and LaShawn Sims turned around and made the game-winning interception. And the Titans were at 8-4, but all the games were ugly. And I remember we were doing the show on a Monday at Bridgestone Arena, and I said, I know you guys are bitching about 8-4, but 8-4 is 8-4, and the Titans hadn't been 8-4 in forever. So I am going to enjoy it. Many of you were not. But apparently Corey says that at that point, when Houston came to town with defensive coordinator Mike Vrabel, that from that point forward, that there was no conversation, like communication was shut off between John Robinson and Mike Mularkey. Like, that's crazy to me if that's true. But who did the Titans play a couple weeks ago? Titans played the Texans. Then they played that last game against Jacksonville. Then they fired him. I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not saying the texter's right, that they knew that Bobby Slowick was going to be the guy the whole time. I don't know that, but I'm not ruling it out. Not at all. Wes in Clarksville says, just because you have a good interview doesn't mean you're a good coach. I'm willing to bet the only reason that Ran is the GM is because they loved how he talked in the interview. Well, sure. But that's with everything, with every job interview. I mean, like, I look at Arthur Smith with the Falcons. I have no idea how he interviewed. I guess he interviewed well enough to get the job. But I look at Arthur, and I think to myself, how did that guy fail? He is a smart guy. He is a good communicator. The players love him. He's a great play caller. He works very well with the quarterback because I saw what he did with Tannehill. He maximizes offensive skill players because I saw what he did with Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, who had their best seasons under him. I watched him win a playoff game with Khalif Raymond and Anthony Ferkser. I mean, there was a very noticeable drop-off from Todd Downing to Arthur Smith. If Arthur had gotten fired after last year, there would have been no question that Arthur would have been the offensive coordinator of the Titans. They would have they would have sent the FedEx plane for Arthur to come bring him down here. But Arthur failed in Atlanta. I'm sure he interviewed great. He's a smart guy. But that's the only, job interviews, that's the only way to know. Like, I know you're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, anybody can job interview. Yes. Like, this is not an exact science. Tough. Thatcher says Callahan doesn't even call the plays for the Bengals. Joe Burrow makes him look better than he really is. It has to be Bobby Slowick. I would caution you on saying that just because the guy doesn't call the plays doesn't mean that he can't call the plays. Zach Taylor calls the plays for the Bengals. Zach Taylor did not call the plays for the LA Rams, as we know Sean McVay did. Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings calls the plays, and he did not call the plays with the LA Rams. And I'm not saying that the Titans value the same things that those teams value because I don't know what those teams value, but I'm just telling you that, again, when it comes to the plays and everything else, like, There have been coaches that don't call the plays, that get jobs, and then call the plays and do well. And that I'm totally fine with. I mean, I would prefer that they call the plays, but I can live with them not calling the plays. Mike McDaniel didn't call the plays in San Francisco. He calls the plays in Miami. So it's not the end of the world, but I would kind of prefer the guy call the plays. What's amazing is that if Vrabel was the GM, he would absolutely be hiring Slowick. There is no chance that Mike Vrabel would hire somebody that he hasn't worked with before. With Rand, we don't know. Anthony Robinson, he'd worked with before as assistant general manager. They had worked together in Atlanta. Chad Brinker, he had not. So with Rand, who knows? But if Vrabel were calling the shots on this, and Vrabel were the GM, and Vrabel had been with the 49ers, and Slowick had been at no doubt. Because that's the way Vrabel does business. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get back to your phones. 615-737-1025 because, again, there is another coaching candidate who's interviewing with the Titans who I'm not interested in, but I would have been. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
You got a busy couple days coming up. How do you just balance everything, like everything you need to do?
The main thing is the main thing. Just like I said last week, man, we're trying to beat Tampa. All right, this is an opportunity for all of us as an organization, as a staff, as players, to get a chance to compete for the Super Bowl. So the thing we got to make sure we put everything we can into winning this game right here. And for me, that's the most important thing.
Game plan, though, is mostly in, like after today, right? So do you study the teams that you're in?
Hayes never in the barn. I learned that from Bill Parcells way back. He hated when people said that. All right, so the Hayes, you could always change something because you're always looking at tape. You're always trying to figure out how you put your guys in the best position. So we're always trying to figure things out as we go through the week. Now, listen, these things are going to come up. Listen, nothing's confirmed just yet. I will tell you that. All right, but when they do come up, listen, I do the interview, and they have a decision to make after that, and I look forward to having them.
You have to spend time preparing for those interviews, and how do you fit that into your 24-hour?
I prepare by being myself. Listen, I've been playing this game for a long time. I've been coaching it for a while. So the questions that they ask, there's a good chance I got them already in my head. So, like I say, I look forward to them. Nothing's confirmed yet, but when they do happen, I'm sure you guys will know.
Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of the Lions, set to interview virtually with the Titans today. And let me say this. I don't think Aaron Glenn has any shot at getting this job because, again, the Titans interviewing David Shaw over the weekend, according to Adam Schefter, is the sign that the Titans are ready to move. And I don't think they'd be ready to move if they hadn't yet interviewed the guy that they were going to hire. So I don't think Aaron Glenn's going to get the job. And I don't want Aaron Glenn to get the job because I want an offensive coach. I want the guru coach. But, man, I like Aaron Glenn. I like him. And if this were 5 years ago when I laughed at the guru coach and I thought that teams that went with we're just going to go with the offensive side. We're not going to worry about the defense. We're going to hire some old guy. We're just, guy's going to bury his head in his play sheet. He's not going to know when to challenge. He's not going to know when to call timeout. He's going to be like Matt LaFleur in the NFC title game where he's kicking a field goal down by 8. Like, I used to think that teams that did that were stupid. But that's where the game's going. Like, the success is there. That's where the game's going. Minnesota was successful last year and successful for the most part until Kirk Cousins got hurt, and even then still had a shot at the playoffs because they have the guru coach. The Dolphins have turned Tua into a guy that you all seem to think might be a franchise quarterback. I don't, but you all do. I think that's because the guru, Mike McDaniel, is maximizing everything he can out of Tua. Matt LaFleur's playing this weekend. He's the guru coach. And again, I think he's a dope. But that's where the game's headed, is for the guru coach. If it wasn't, I think Aaron Glenn might be my favorite candidate. If this were 5 years ago, and again, that leader of men thing mattered to me, and relatability mattered to me, and the fact that Aaron Glenn's got the skins on the wall, he's got great energy, I think he'd be a great coach for the fans. But it doesn't matter to me anymore. The guru stuff is what matters. Don has been waiting patiently and is up next today on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Don?
Hey, Jared. Love your show. My question is, why in football, when you're the general manager, you only have a one shot, where like Dave Dombrowski in baseball, he gets some, he'll tell them, I'm going to get rid of your farm system, but I'm going to get you the World Series. And he does most of the time. Why is it just a one shot in NFL? It doesn't make sense to me.
No, I hear you, and I appreciate your call, Don. And you are right. Like in baseball, I mean, they go around all over the place, and and the NFL has changed. And I think the reason why, and I've thought about this a lot with the Titans coaching search, because all the people that we think the Titans are going to hire are all guys that don't have head coaching experience. Which, again, McVay didn't have any head coaching experience. It's worked for them. LaFleur didn't have any head coaching experience. It's apparently working for them. Same with Shanahan. Same with McVay or with McDaniel and all the gurus that we're looking at right now. And I do think there is something to be said for experience, especially at head coach or general manager. Like, surely Mike Vrabel is not going to stink as bad with the coaching staff as he did here. Because A, he knows more people around the league, and B, he knows I just can't fudge it on the offensive line anymore. But maybe not. Surely Arthur, if he ever gets another head coaching job, is not going to go in the season with a quarterback saying, I can do this. He's going to have a Neil O'Donnell sitting behind him that it's like, oh, yeah, Desmond Ridder kind of sucks. Neil O'Donnell, get in there. Somebody that can actually win them games. Heineke, good backup, but he's backup. It's like a spare tire. We need a real one here. And maybe he'll learn from that. So I've thought about that. To your point about GMs, why GMs don't get second chances. My theory behind this is because every general manager that gets fired probably leaves on a sour note, and that is what that GM is remembered by. And because the GMs get paid out of their contracts, it's like they can't go to other teams and work as the number 2 and work all those hours for no pay and not be in charge. And even if they were the number 2, what everybody would still remember them is the last thing that they did. And John Robinson is a perfect example of this because you guys think John Robinson is the devil. You think he's so bad, he ruined this team, he's the worst, he won 61% of his games. Did he blow some first-round picks? Yeah. Guess what? Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not setting the world on fire in Kansas City. The Eagles busted in back-to-back years on Andre Dillard and Jalen Reagor. It happens. But you all think Robinson's terrible, and then everybody around the country thinks Robinson's terrible because they think he's the guy that traded A.J. Brown. And nobody ever gives him credit. Every time they talk about Vrabel, they talk about, well, he took that team to the AFC Championship game. Did he take that team to the AFC Championship game? Or did Derrick Henry, who John Robinson drafted, did he take them there? You know, the core of that team was a Mike Mularkey team that went to that AFC Championship game. But again, everybody just thinks of Robinson. They think, oh, that dummy, he traded away A.J. Brown. He's a dummy. And Robinson's getting paid so much money that it wouldn't make any sense for him to go somewhere else to be director of player development and then hope maybe down the road he gets another chance. I actually talked to Floyd about that when we were walking into the AFC, or no, maybe we were walking out of the AFC Championship game. I can't remember. And I said to him, I go, if J-Rob came up to you and said, Floyd, I need you. I need you. I'm going to pay you. I want you to be the second in command, or I want you to be the senior football advisor or whatever, but I need you. Would you do it? And he looked at me and he's like, He goes, probably not. He's like, just because at this point in my life, the amount of work that goes into working a job like that, like if I'm going to do that, Floyd said to me, he's like, I want to be in charge. And I think that's part of it too. Now, look, John Dorsey, he's had multiple GM jobs and he's working in the Lions front office, but like he's not going to get another job. So I think it comes down to like everybody blames you for your last mistake and they don't think about the good that you did. Like Thomas Dimitrov and the good that he did in Atlanta when they were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Dan Quinn got blamed for that falling apart too, but he's been able to resurrect himself in Dallas until last Sunday. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is a fascinating development that Paul Kaharski shed some light on this morning that I have actually heard as well. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So apparently yesterday, former Titans offensive lineman Zach Pillar went on across the street and said he had talked to Mike Munchak, and Mike Munchak was ready to coach. Now, Mike Munchak is technically retired, but you know how that goes. Guys sitting there saying, hey, be interested in coaching if you want to pay me the money. And as I had said, Amy Adams Strunk and Mike Vrabel, and this was when we were operating under the assumption that Mike Vrabel was going to continue to be the Titans coach because Diana Rossini told us that Mike Vrabel was going to remain the Titans coach. When we were operating under that assumption, I think we all knew that Jason Hodling was out, right? Like, let's just, go back into fairy tale land and Vrabel stays the coach. There's no way they were bringing Hodling back, right, Ian?
Doesn't seem likely.
I mean, there's no way. Now, Bowen and Kelly and some of these other coaches, that would have been up in the air. I'd have been fine with keeping Tim Kelly. I wouldn't have loved it, and I'd be pushing for Arthur Smith. But, I mean, to me, Bowen's got to go, and Hodling, he's got to go. And I think we all know that. Now, I already got the special teams coach fired, and I actually like the interim guy that they put in there. Well, as I had said, Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk have to get together, and this is, again, in fairy tale land, had Vrabel stayed the coach, and they need to go to Mike Munchak, and they need to knock on the door, and she's got to have a checkbook with her, and they have to, hat in hand, say, hey, I know you were the head coach here. I know it didn't work out here. And we want you back, and we're going to pay. And that you need him because the Senior Bowl is upcoming, and he needs to be around those prospects as fast as possible. Well, apparently, and I had actually heard some of this too, when I was told somebody talking to Mike Munchak, and they said, they had said that Munchak should be the offensive line coach, and Munchak said to them, are you writing the checks? With a question mark like, okay, for the money, it's money solves a lot of issues. Kaharski this morning on Robbie and Joe said he has talked to Munchak, and here's what he gathered.
Have you talked to Munchak? Is he ready? Is he ready once they call the bat phone? He's just come be the O-line coach or whoever gets the head coaching job?
This is true. I have talked to Munchak, and I'm pissed at Pillar for saying it. Now, he was ready.
We'll give you the scoop. You got the scoop on our show.
He was ready to take a call from Vrabel if Vrabel had an opening. And he is ready to coach given the right situation. He lives in Denver currently. But, he doesn't know who's getting this job, obviously. So he could have, a problem with whoever gets the job. But provided that, he's neutral or has good feelings about the guy, he'll answer the phone. And he's got no beef with current set up your news sounder because this goes further than Pillar. He's got no beef with Titans ownership currently. His beef with previous ownership, and he would come back in that role despite having been dismissed as head coach.
Okay. So Mike Munchak would have interest in returning as head coach. Offensive line coach, even though he was once head coach. So what does this mean? Well, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of ownership here because if we're talking about Mike Munchak, given the fact that he was at one point a former coach of this team and also a legend of this organization, this does involve ownership. I could not tell Brian Callahan or Bobby Slowick or whoever the coach is going to be. I personally would not tell them, you need to hire Mike Munchak to be the offensive line coach. Because I can't do that. I can't go to them as I'm hiring them for the job. I can't go to Bobby Slowick and say, Bobby, we believe in you. Here's a big old fat check. And now I'm going to handcuff you and tell you who to hire. Can't do that. But what I can do is I can tell Rand Carthon, hey, talk it over with him about offensive line coaches. If he's got a guy he loves, we'll hire him. But see what he would think about the idea of bringing in Mike Munchak and naming him the assistant head coach. Again, I don't know if Terrell Williams stays or not. I think there's a chance that a lot of the Vrabel coaches will get jobs elsewhere. I also think there's a chance that some of the Vrabel coaches can stay. Because the Titans, again, the offensive staff, a lot of the offensive staff that wasn't Pat O'Hara or somebody like that, a lot of those guys were Matt LaFleur hires. And obviously, McVay, Shanahan, the gurus, Tony Dews, Rob Moore, those guys like that, they know that system. They've run it. They, again, were hired by Matt LaFleur. So I could see, the new guru coming in and saying, no, I want Tony Dews to be the running backs coach or the tight ends coach. I want Rob Moore to be the receivers coach because they get the endorsement from LaFleur. I think there's a chance that it could work with Munchak. And here's why. Again, I'm not forcing Mike Munchak on anybody. But in 2019, Mike Munchak was hired as the offensive line coach of the Denver Broncos. And I believe he was there for a couple years under Vic Fangio. Rich Scangarello was the offensive coordinator on the 2019 Broncos. Rich Scangarello was the quarterback's coach the year before of the San Francisco 49ers under Kyle Shanahan. So Scangarello has run that offense with Munchak as the offensive line coach. So that means if Bobby Slowick or Brian Callahan or one of these Shanahan McVay gurus from the tree runs the offense, gets hired with the job, Mike Munchak will know exactly how to coach that offensive line. In fact, Rich Scangarello, who of all these guys is the only one who apparently seems to grade out as a complete and total crap bum. But Rich Scangarello ended up being the offensive coordinator at Kentucky that replaced Liam Cohen and worked with Will Levis in his last year of college. So I know that, again, with a 49er Shanahan coach, I know Munchak can coach that system, which means that I think there's a chance that could work. Now, I don't know what the relationship between Scangarello and Munchak was, and I don't know what the relationship between Slowick and Scangarello was, and whatever. Or even Scangarello and Rand Carthon, I don't know. I know that Munchak can coach this scheme on the offensive line, which takes me back to Slowick. I look at him, or Callahan not so much because he's been in the game so long and because his old man was a head coach and is still like a positional coach now. I look at, maybe he wouldn't feel the same way, but I do wonder how one of these guys would feel about having a former head coach who's in the team's Hall of Fame on their staff as an assistant head coach, because that guy's got skins on the wall. That guy carries a big stick. At that point, do they think it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks? Do they think, hey, I can really, round Munchak into what I want him to be? Or here I am in my first job, and now I have to kind of adjust because the O-line coach wants it. That is at least somewhat complicated there in terms of what they're going to do. All I know about Mike Munchak is this. I know that when Mike Munchak was the offensive line coach, when I was a kid, the Tennessee Titans never struggled with offensive line issues. Guys still got hurt. Guys left in free agency. Guys retired. Bruce Matthews retired one year. And the Titans replaced Bruce Matthews with a guy by the name of Gennardo DiNapoli, who was a backup offensive lineman on the Titans for a handful of years. And Gennardo DiNapoli went in there to play center, kind of like Aaron Brewer. He'd been a backup for a while, and they said, all right, Gennardo DiNapoli, you're in there. And he was good. In fact, for that year, he was so good, they signed a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. And then the Titans drafted Justin Hartwig in the second round. And then he was their center. They always seem to have the next guy ready. Fred Miller leaves, David Stewart's in. Brad Hopkins goes and retires, Michael Roos is in. They always had the next guy. And they didn't have offensive line issues, whether it was, Jacob Bell and Benji Olsen and Eugene Amano and Kevin Mawai in free agency. It's like, man, You're hitting on these guys in the 6th round. And I asked the old man, I said, how did you do it? Because the Titans had these issues as far as, the offensive line, even before it got as bad as it was. I mean, the first half of that 2019 season, where the offensive line morphed into maybe the best offensive line in the league, they really struggled when Lawan was suspended and Saffold was new and Nate Davis was hurt. And I asked Floyd, I said, how did you get all these great linemen, even if they, Benji Olsen was in the 4th or 5th round? And he said to me, he goes, well, I had Munchak. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if we were thinking about drafting an offensive lineman, we just put him around Munchak. Munchak meet him at the combine. We'd bring him in for a visit. He'd be with Munchak. And Munchak thought he had the personality and everything else and gave us the thumb up, thumbs down. We're like, okay, we'll draft him. And clearly evaluating offensive linemen, whether it be free agency or the draft, has been a humongous problem around here. So I just know that if Munchak can thumbs up, thumbs down, and it's worked before, I personally would like to have Munchak come back in here and thumbs up, thumbs down. But if not, I can't push that on the next coach. It has to be something where, in collaboration, he and Rand are talking through the coaching staff, and Rand says, what do you think about Mike Munchak? Would you be interested? Do you think you could make it work? Because I think, and then Amy's got to do her part. Again, Paul said that Munchak is not mad, with the current state of ownership. He was mad with Tommy Smith, who did absolutely pork him at the end there with the way they treated him on the coaching staff. But you have to give him the title assistant head coach. Like, you have to give him an elevated title to almost recognize his seniority and relationship with the organization. But I can't force that on the new coach. Corey Curtis will join us next. His thoughts on the coaching searches around the league and his thoughts on the Titans, as always. Fireball whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to end your dry January, if you were really thinking about trying to do it, than to do so with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. I'm not a dry January guy, so I don't have to worry about that. But if you are, this weekend we're going to celebrate the end of the snow, because this time next week it's supposed to be like 50 degrees. Hallelujah. Fireball whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball cinnamon whiskey. Titans coaching search continuing to roll along. Last night, they completed their interview with Bobby Slowick, the Texans' offensive coordinator. Brian Callahan is supposedly going to get a second in-person interview next week. And they just completed one with Brian Johnson, and I think they've got one with Aaron Glenn. And then at 6 o'clock this morning, Adam Schefter put out there that the Titans will be interviewing David Shaw, the former Stanford head coach, for their head coaching position. Let me just tell you right now, David Shaw is not a candidate for the head coaching job for the Tennessee Titans, which means that they are getting through the mandatory 2 external minority candidate interviews because they are planning to move quickly. I don't know who. I think it's narrowed down to Slowick or Callahan, but I don't know who. Corey Curtis joins us now, News 2 on the program. Corey, how shocked were you about the David Shaw tweet from Adam Schefter this morning at 6 a.m.? And do you think this is a signal that the Titans are getting ready to move?
No. Number one, he also interviewed with the Chargers, or is interviewing with the Chargers. He's a guy people have thought of pretty highly of for a while. Obviously,
but what do we think the Chargers are going to do?
They're going to hire Jim Harbaugh, but I don't think it has anything to do with fulfilling minority interviews. They've done that. I mean, they've already interviewed more than 2 external.
So that doesn't count. Those are virtual interviews. So
okay, so they have to be in person.
Yes, and you cannot interview in person with anybody who's working with an NFL team currently until after the divisional round of the playoffs, which is why the Raiders, for instance, who moved quickly on Antonio Pierce, interviewed Chris Richard and Leslie Frazier, and the Chargers have interviewed Leslie Frazier and David Shaw.
And the Titans will have David Shaw and who else?
They will have to interview a second external minority candidate next week.
So that could be what was the cat from the Panthers?
Thomas Brown.
Just talked to Thomas Brown could possibly be that guy. Yeah, I mean, look, they said they wanted to make the decision to move on from Vrabel and not trade him because they wanted to move quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to move quickly on it. Does that mean I know more of who it is? Not necessarily. I have my inklings on who it's going to be, but we'll see. I mean, but I think from the jump, they've had a pretty good idea of who they want. It's just a matter of whether they can get them or not.
What are the inklings?
Me, I keep hearing a lot about Aaron Glenn, and his name comes up over and over and over again to me, and so and I know fans are not happy when I tell them that. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is the name I keep hearing. Obviously Brian Callahan's a good candidate. I think Ben Johnson's another guy that they like a lot, but I think there are people with deeper pockets for Ben Johnson who are going to go after him.
So what makes you think Aaron Glenn, like outside of Dan Graziano projecting it, just speculating it on ESPN.com, what have you heard that leads you to Aaron Glenn?
Before this ever started, I had somebody bring up Aaron Glenn's name to me, saying
somebody important,
somebody I trust, and then I asked somebody else I trust. I even said, "Is Aaron Glenn the next head coach?" And they didn't say that he was the next head coach, but they said they like him and somebody else an awful lot, and I'm like, okay, Aaron Glenn is way up high on the list, and so we'll wait and we'll see.
Well, that would then make sense if they only interview David Shaw as the external in-person minority candidate, because then the second external minority candidate in person would then be Aaron Glenn, and then they'd make Aaron Glenn the coach.
Yeah, they could do that. Absolutely.
So I am fascinated by that. The timing, though, here's why I don't think Glenn is in the mix. Because the announcement of Shaw was at 6:04 this morning from Schefter, and last night they interviewed Slowick. Now, it came out, I think, yesterday that they were bringing Callahan in for a second interview. My guess is that, and you know how this works as well as anybody, Corey, that the actual negotiating, they're not doing that in those job interviews. They're not, let's talk to Bobby and let's think on it. Rand is talking to Bobby's agent or Brian Callahan's agent, and the money and that, they're getting that figured out off to the side, away from all the official channels. But what I found fascinating was that they decided to interview Shaw this weekend, And it was after it came out, after they interviewed Slowick last night, which made me think that one of two things happened. Either they're scheduling the second interview in person with Callahan because, okay, we liked it, we're going to wrap it up there, or they did it with Slowick last night. They said, we thought Bobby was our guy. We interviewed Bobby. We like Bobby. Bobby's the guy. Let's make it so that as soon as they lose, we can get moving.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that case for a number of these guys. There's no question. I mean, you can make it for Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson because they could both be out, after this weekend.
But they haven't talked to them yet.
No, they haven't, and that's why they haven't been able to offer them a second interview yet because they still need to talk to them. Look, they could say they want Aaron Glenn. He's choice one, but they really like Brian Callahan. So if you can't get your one, you've got to have your 1A. And so they're casting a wide net. They've got 10, 11 candidates now. And I think that's great. I think talking to a lot of people is good. I think, increasing your circle is good. Increasing, your knowledge of what people have to offer, is good. But I think I agree with what you have to say that they want to move sooner rather than later. You don't want the thing when you're picking last, you're not just picking the last head coach, then you're picking the last assistant coaches as well.
Mm-hmm. And the Senior Bowl's upcoming, and they obviously are going to have to draft well. Corey Curtis is with us from News 2. If Corey Curtis owned the Titans, who would be the leader in the clubhouse right now for the head coaching position?
Oh, wow. Mike Ditka. No. I have never – Slowick is so new to me. I've just been reading about him, and what he's done this year is really impressive. And, he's worked with people in San Francisco where the track record is good. I've got to know more about his, leadership qualities and some of these other things. So I think from my two leaders in the clubhouse would be Slowick and Callahan. Having said that, I don't feel I know enough about Slowick to just say, yes, he's my leader in the clubhouse. I mean, I know more about Callahan, and I like Callahan's pedigree, a lot. So he would be one, and Slowick would probably be 1A.
Is there any coaching candidate that has been mentioned so far or interviewed that is an absolute non-starter for you?
Well, I guess Patrick Mahomes had a lot of good things to say about Mike Kafka, but that one kind of caught me out of left field. Again, I always try to keep my eyes open to people because nobody knew about Mike Tomlin when Mike Tomlin got hired, and so you don't always know. I mean, Mike Vrabel had 1 year coordinator's experience, and he had the worst defense in the league. And, he comes in here and he's a good head coach. And so, I'm not in the room. I don't know what these guys are selling. And so I try not to be. I will tell you, if it was Bill Belichick, that'd be a non-starter for me. I wouldn't want him to be the Titans' next head coach.
What about Thomas Brown, the OC at Carolina that TD and Joe are, I'm not saying pumping because that's not their first choice, but they would accept that hire. I would not.
Well, I mean, look, Carolina was terrible this year, and they don't have great players, and so there's a lot to that. Now he's also got that Rams, pedigree to him, and I know when he went to Carolina, a lot of people thought a lot about that hire. So he's a guy that there's another candidate, Brian Johnson.
I'm out on him because they were terrible at the end of the year.
And that's my thing. I don't know enough about Brian Johnson. All I know is this: they regressed offensively. Jalen Hurts regressed, and that's scary when you got a young quarterback and you have Jalen Hurts with Shane Steichen performing at a really high level, and then Brian Johnson takes over, and now all of Jalen Hurts' teammates are looking at him like, "Bro, what's up? What are you doing?" And so, and that's the guy you're going to hire. And that might be unfair because I didn't know a lot about Brian Johnson until this year, but that's all I know about him. So I would have a hard time with him, from that aspect, along with, Thomas Brown. That would be, the results in Carolina are difficult. But again, the pedigree is there. The Rams' pedigree is there. And people thought a lot about him from his time there.
Corey Curtis is with us, Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
everybody, because I bring this up because of Aaron Glenn. They get infuriated about the Titans possibly hiring a defensive-minded head coach.
Me too.
And look, I understand it, but at the same time, Bill Belichick's offense scored a ton of points when he had the right players on the field, and Mike Vrabel's offense scored a lot of points when he had the right offensive coordinator and the right players.
And then what happened?
When you lose the OC, and that's what I was going to get to. When you lose the OC and you lose the players, by the way, then that becomes a problem. Because the only head coaches, who are the head coaches where it's really mattered that they are offensively oriented? Andy Reid,
Shanahan,
McVay.
McDaniel.
Yeah, and these Josh McDaniels. Really?
I said
throw
McDaniel. Mike McDaniel. But
okay.
Bill Walsh, Mike Holmgren.
Yeah, we would call Reed and Walsh kind of innovators, right? But
sure.
But even Andy Reid this year has been subject to bad players dragging down his offense. Correct?
Sure. Every coach has to have good players, but I want an offensive coach because they make the decent players better.
Yeah, but we're talking about a handful of coaches here who've transitioned. I think McDaniels is done well in Miami, but you see the talent they've got on offense.
Well, the quarterback
is it him? Yeah, and they're still scoring a ton of points because they got Cheetah and Waddle and Mostert.
Because the Guru and Tyreek are getting every drop of juice out of that orange that is to him.
Yeah, but again, you see the difference Tyreek made leaving Kansas City. He's.
I'm not saying the Titans need to hire Bobby Slowick and then never worry about getting a good receiver.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm just saying that you can still be good on offense.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the defensive coach because then as soon as you lose the coordinator and you go to sucking, and I'm not interested in that. Unless you get lucky.
You hired Todd Downing, yeah.
Unless you get lucky, unless you do that, or you hire a freaking old fat guy like Tom Moore, and nobody ever tries to hire him. Corey Curtis, News 2, as always on our program. Great stuff, Corey. Appreciate you.
All right, well, thanks, man.
Yep, Corey Curtis joining us as always. That's the other option. An old fat guy, Charlie Weiss, whatever, and then nobody will ever try to hire him. And that's the only other option, and I'm not interested in that. Give me the Guru. Not that I have a problem with old or fat, but it's just there's a little banking on a lot there to hit it right. Give me the Guru. 615-737-1025. So Philadelphia radio legend Angelo Cataldi, who is a freaking legend in this industry, went absolutely haywire after the Eagles loss to Tampa Bay. He's actually retired. They called him just to get his reaction. You've got to hear that, plus his plan to fix the Eagles. You got to hear that. And we'll do that next on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Now, listen, what I'm not doing, it's not all Jalen's fault. But I don't think it's all Coach Sirianni's fault either. That's all I'm saying. I need to figure it out.
Let me clarify this and make it simpler, all right? Coach Sirianni has one problem. He sucks at coaching. This is a problem when you're the head coach of an NFL team. You saw what was going on with the defense second half of the year.
They look lost. They look lost.
Did they do, Douglas, you were a great defender yourself. Did they do anything to fix it? How about the tackling? How was it? Joe Giglio, how was the tackling? How was the tackling?
That was Angelo Cataldi, who is a Philadelphia radio legend. In fact, he's really just a radio legend. Like, he was making, over $1 million a year for about 30 years doing morning drive in Philadelphia, used to just get into it with all the coaches, all the general managers, would always get it, all kinds of crazy stuff over 30 years. He retired after last football season. So they brought him on his old station, 94 WIP in Philadelphia, and they were like, Angelo, your reaction to the Philly meltdown. And you heard right there, he explains that the biggest problem with Coach Nick Sirianni is that he sucks at coaching, which, again, is what it is. Well, I was listening to this interview last night just because, whatever. I didn't think we'd be talking about it. And then all of a sudden they asked Angelo how to save the Philadelphia Eagles. And I had to listen to this like 2 times because I could not believe it. Go ahead.
This group of coaches that are available may be the most accomplished ever, obviously led by Bill Belichick. Angelo, in your mind, if not Sirianni, who would you want to see coaching this team?
I have it. I have the name, and I love him. And he would fit here perfectly. Not Belichick. He's 72. He's as old as I am. He's done. All right? No. Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
Think it over. Defensive mind. I thought he was a very good coach at Tennessee, but he had horrible ownership. All right? So he didn't have any power over personnel. Here's the other thing, though. You bring in Vrabel. He'll fix that defense. I promise you he'll fix that defense immediately. And no more A.J. Brown problems. He and A.J. Brown were basically joined at the hip. When they were about to trade A.J. Brown from Tennessee here, Mike Vrabel went public and said, they'll do that over my dead body. And then they did it, and he didn't die, fortunately. But I'm telling you guys, that's the guy I want here. Now, it would require the owner, Lurie, and Howie Roseman to take a step back and bring in a man who actually really knows football. And Mike Vrabel would bring in a great staff, keep out of his way, and Mike Vrabel would fix A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts would be in a much better place, and the defense would be 10 times better than what you just saw. That's the answer.
Where do they get this stuff about Mike Vrabel? Nick Sirianni. So here's the thing. First of all, I do think Vrabel would be a good fit for Philadelphia. Now, I think Vrabel would be a good fit for Philadelphia because I think that, they need a little sandpaper toughness. Like, Sirianni's kind of a softie. Like, they need, and he is right about A.J. Brown. That I do believe that A.J. Brown has so much respect for Mike Vrabel that he would not tear the team apart the way it reportedly sounds like A.J. Brown did this past year. And so I don't think Vrabel would be a bad coach for Philadelphia. But this idea of, I promise you, Vrabel would fix that defense. I promise you. And Jeffrey Lurie, who's won a Super Bowl and been to 2 others, and Howie Roseman, who's won a Super Bowl and been to 2 others, they need to go hire somebody that understands football. And Vrabel is the guy who understands football. And again, my favorite part in that entire thing was, I promise you, he'll bring in a great staff. Angelo, let me tell you about Craig Aukerman. Jason Houtling. Where do these people, I understand the idea Vrabel was a good player and he's got a good personality and he is a good coach. I'm not knocking that. But where do they come up with this stuff about Mike Vrabel is the cure-all? If we were to take a blind resume between Nick Sirianni, who I agree, I think he's kind of a bozo, but if we were to take a blind resume between Sirianni and Vrabel, it's not close. Sirianni, 3 years, 3 playoff appearances. So he is batting 1,000 at making the playoffs. Sirianni has won an NFC championship. Thus, he's been to the Super Bowl. Mike Vrabel has not. Mike Vrabel is batting 50% at making the playoffs. And Sirianni's done that in an era where the Cowboys have been good and the Giants last year made it to the playoffs. Like, they're not in a schlub division, even though the division with the Giants and Washington wasn't very good this year. And yet, again, like, the voice of Philadelphia is just like, oh no, Mike Vrabel will come in and fix everything. I'm like, look, I get it. Vrabel's a good coach. I like Vrabel as a coach. I didn't want him to be my coach anymore, but I understand and think he'd be okay. But the idea, this blind faith that Mike Vrabel, because he played defense, would be able to fix the defense. Did you see the 2020 season? Did you see this past season? Vrabel's had the worst secondary in the NFL the last 2 years in a row. And you're going to give him that secondary after what we saw Monday night? It is amazing to me how Mike Vrabel is just the end-all freaking be-all when it comes to coaching as far as media people are concerned. And again, it's not that I don't like Vrabel. It's just, I just don't think Vrabel's that good. Like, I think Vrabel's good. I don't think Vrabel is that good that it's like, boys, I have the answer for fixing the Eagles, and there is no way, no how this won't work. Mike Vrabel. What? Now, I will say this. If Vrabel got hired for one of these jobs, Chargers, Seattle, I guess he's in the mix in Atlanta, but they're going to hire Belichick. If he got hired for one of these jobs and somebody were to ask me, Jared, you know Mike Vrabel, do you think this is going to work? I'd ask one question. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? If it's Arthur Smith, you've got a shot. If it's Tim Kelly, I'm not so certain. And if it is TBD, then I would worry about that. Because the one thing that I think Vrabel absolutely freaking sucks at is managing a coaching staff. I think he is terrible with the coaching staff, which I also think is like the number 3 thing in terms of coaching. Number 1 is respect to the players, and he's got that. Number 2 is strategy. And at times it's been very good, and at times it's been very bad. And number 3 is managing the coaching staff. That's before the media, the fans, everything else. Managing the coaching staff is very important, and he stinks at it. So, Angelo, I'm just telling you, you guys in Philly or Seattle or wherever Vrabel ends up, you guys are sold that, oh, my God, this guy knows football. I don't think Vrabel knows football more than any other coach other than, Frank Reich. But, everybody gets carried away with Vrabel. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Vrabel, Adam Schefter has the latest on what's up with Vrabel. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What are you hearing on Mike Vrabel? Because maybe he doesn't have the Belichick or the Harbaugh resume, and I agree with what John Harbaugh said in your podcast about his brother, but I think Mike Vrabel, that's an instant home run hire, whoever gets him.
Well, he talked to the Chargers yesterday. That was his first interview since the Titans fired him. My understanding is that the Seahawks want to talk to him, and Mike has a very good relationship with the Seahawks general manager, John Schneider. The Falcons want to talk to him. He would provide what the type of experience that Atlanta is looking for. And I'm sure there are others that are going to want to speak to him. I just know that he has spoken to the Chargers. I know the Seahawks and Falcons also have expressed interest. Could there be more? Yes. Will there be more? Probably.
There you go. That was Shefty today on Adam Shine's Mad Dog Sports Radio show, saying basically all I'm hearing is, the Seahawks in Atlanta want to talk to him. He met with the Chargers. But again, we all think the Chargers are going Harbaugh, right? And I don't know if you've seen the reporting, Ian, about about Belichick in Atlanta, but Arthur Blank flew Belichick on his private plane.
Saw that.
To Atlanta to have dinner with him and then meet with everybody else. Belichick's going to be the coach. It's as simple. I feel bad for Terry Fontenot, the general manager, because Belichick is about to freaking box him out of there. But Belichick's going to be the coach in Atlanta. Seattle, who knows? So what does that mean for Vrabel? Adam Schefter, and we've talked about this, Adam Schefter, again, it's different between what Adam thinks and Adam is sourcing, and this doesn't seem sourced. But Adam Schefter thinks there's a chance Vrabel does not coach this upcoming season.
Listen, there are 7 openings right now, and you could just start slotting in guys and kind of work backwards. Like Harbaugh makes sense with the Chargers. Belichick makes sense with the Falcons. Antonio Pierce makes sense with the Raiders. Now that gives us 4 more openings. Well, Mike Vrabel's not getting Tennessee. So is he getting Seattle? Is he getting Washington? Is he getting Atlanta? There's only a few more places to consider. So, in a case like that, if I'm Mike Vrabel, if one of these comes up and it works out, great. And if it doesn't, I say, you know what? I'll take my money for a year. I'll go around. I'll study film, help kind of improve and redefine myself. And I'll come back next year and I'll be the top coaching free agent in the class of 2025. Either way, he's going to come out in a good situation.
Can I just say to that, boo! I want Mike Vrabel coaching next season. One texter into the text line says, somebody tell Jared that Vrabel is gone. And let me say this. I thought when Mike Mularkey got fired, the second he got fired, this fan base, this listening audience, y'all were done with Mike Mularkey. You were done discussing whether or not he should be fired. You were done discussing whether or not the Titans did him dirty. You didn't care. You were on to the next. When it comes to Vrabel, you care. And I know it because I see how you react. And so I'm sorry. There is a part of me that still thinks Vrabel is a good coach. There is a part of me that thinks Vrabel can have success. There is a part of me that actually thinks that I might be wrong and that Vrabel might actually be the mecca of coaching and that Amy Adams Strunk and Rand Carthon and everybody else got in the way. There's not a large part of me that thinks that, but there is maybe a little bit. I want to see it. Like, what Vrabel does is going to be like the biggest story around here if he is coaching next season, particularly for an interesting team. Seattle makes it kind of tough because who cares about them? But like, if he is coaching the freaking Chargers next year and they are 5-1, that is a big deal around here. This is A.J. Brown, but more because Vrabel was more popular than A.J. Brown. And instead of, again, John Robinson, who was the one that everybody got mad about with A.J. Brown, they're going to be mad at the owner if Vrabel goes somewhere and wins big. Like, I'm just telling you, if you're the New York Jets and he becomes Belichick, these fans will never forgive Amy Adams Strunk. Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen. But I want to see it play out. I want to see Vrabel coach a team next year. So when he brings in some bozo as his offensive line coach, I can say, ah! Like, that's what I want. When he signs Andre Dillard again, like, That's what I want. And I think Schefter's right. I don't think Vrabel's going to coach a team this upcoming year, which stinks. Because, again, it's like, ugh, boo. One texter says, please, in all caps, let Vrabel go to the Eagles. I just want to hear his press conferences. I do want to know if Mike Vrabel takes a more popular job, right? Like Dallas isn't coming open, but there was a thought it could. If Mike Vrabel takes a more popular job, Atlanta, not popular. Seattle, not popular. Washington is not really popular. Carolina is not popular. The Raiders' job is filled. The Chargers' job's not really popular either. The Eagles are probably the only popular team left on the map, right? Patriots.
Washington? Did you say Washington?
They're not popular.
Sure they are.
Nah.
All they need is a win or two, and they'll be very popular. They have a very old-school, popular, big fan base.
I do not think Washington is popular.
Maybe not as much as the Eagles, but I don't know. I think you're underestimating that.
I mean, I certainly don't think that Washington is in the category of Pittsburgh, New England, Dallas, Denver, Kansas City right now, San Francisco. Like, I don't think they're in that group.
Probably not, but they're the second tier I would go with.
Yeah, but I want, first tier. I want TV cameras on Vrabel all the time because I wonder if he would be so freaking arrogant to go up there and act like he acted here and see how that works for him. Like, let's see how that works. One texter says that dude had some magic mushrooms, talking about Angelo Cataldi, had some magic mushrooms in his coffee when talking about Vrabel. He's not the only one that waxes poetically about how great of a coach Mike Vrabel was. And I don't think he's the only one that believes, as he said in the cut that we played, oh, yeah, it didn't work out in Tennessee because they got horrible ownership. Again, I don't think the Titans have horrible ownership. But again, it's not about what I think. It's about what everybody else thinks. Texture says, Vrabel is just like John Hines. He just hypnotizes these people. And I don't know if it's a Nashville thing or because the Titans are a low-tier NFL organization, but everyone thinks it is amazing that he won any games. I do not think that Mike Vrabel is anything like John Hines, other than the fact that I wanted them both fired and that they both did get fired. Other than that, nah. Jeff from Hendersonville says, what if Andy Reid retires? Woof. My guess is they would just make an Andy Reid guy the coach, like Matt Nagy would be the next head coach of the Chiefs. But I could be wrong. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is a serious Will Levis conundrum that I am starting to notice, that I am actually fascinated by. And I do think that it does matter for the next coach where he sits with this. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let me tell you about Twice Daily. Twice Daily wants to send you to Italy. I drove by Twice Daily today, and I saw the signs, go to Italy, 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 Italy. They want to send you to Italy. So why don't you go? Log on to twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info, but buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app, and you will get entered to win. Every sub is a chance to win, and mobile-ordered Italian subs count as 2 times the entry. That's right, Twice Daily's got you covered with made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. The Twice Daily team is ready to make you exactly what you want any time of the day. Download the Twice Daily app and join their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily. We will earn points and save money with every visit. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered because Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So, Will Levis, as it stands right now, is the Titans quarterback. We don't know who the Titans coach is going to be. And yet, I keep wondering, what does the new coach mean for Will Levis? What can the new coach do for Will Levis? And one of the most important things, and this may be the case with anything in life, but it is absolutely true when it comes to the NFL, is that belief, which cannot be manufactured or faked, belief is incredibly important when it comes to maximizing potential or seeing through a vision. So all of these candidates are probably interviewing for the job, and they probably all say good things about Will Levis. But how many of them actually believe in Will Levis's ability? Now, when Will Levis was in the draft, I went to the Super Bowl last year before I had really watched any tape or anything like that. And I talked to a former general manager. And I said, what do you make of all of this Will Levis first-round pick stuff? Because I was like you. Kentucky wasn't, So what do you make of all this Will Levis first-round pick stuff? And that general manager said to me, I think he might go with the number 1 pick. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. I really think there's a chance he goes number 1, just from the people that I've talked to in the league. And it was me and the GM and a former agent and a current agent. We're all sitting there talking about, wait a minute, what? Number 1 pick? And so at that point, I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. And then I watched tape. And I was like, boy, I like Levis. I don't love him. I wouldn't trade up to number 3 with Arizona in order to get him. But if he was there with the 11th overall pick in the draft, I'd take Will Levis. He's got the size. He's got the arm. Everybody swears by him that knows him. And so I would have been okay with taking Levis at 11. I'm still mad the Titans didn't take Levis at 11, even though they were able to get him later. Freaking guard. But anyway, I sit here today, and I'm noticing a trend when it comes to Levis. Either you hate Will Levis, or you love Will Levis. And I mean love. And I sit in the very middle. I liked Levis coming out. You all hated him. Ian, you remember those shows leading up to the draft when we talked about Levis and Richardson and Hooker almost every day for 3 months on the air.
Oh, yeah.
Those fans hated Will Levis.
Usually, mostly.
I was looking for a quote before the Titans played the Colts in the game that Ryan Stonehouse lost his leg. I was looking for an audio cut of Chris Ballard talking about Will Levis after the draft, because I think Ballard said something or hinted along the lines that, yeah, we really like Levis too. We took Richardson, but we did really like Levis. And so I was looking for that audio. So I did a search on Twitter, and a search I did was Ballard Levis, because, something like that will come up, and it would be something like Chris Ballard saying, we really liked Will Levis, and then I could see the date of the press conference, and then I could go find the audio. And I know I'm probably boring you with that, but the reason I tell you this story is because when I did that, one of the things that came up on Twitter with just Ballard and Levis was some guy who was clearly a Titan fan from before the draft tweeting about how stupid Chris Ballard is because he likes Will Levis. And guess what the guy, again, clearly a Titan fan, guess what his Twitter picture was, Ian?
Something with the Vols.
It was Levis in the Oilers uniform.
Oh, he did a switcheroo.
Oh, he did the switcheroo. And there was a lot of that. Again, I liked Levis. You got mad at me. They drafted Levis. I liked Levis. Still, Levis played well. I liked Levis. I didn't get too high on Levis. I liked him fine. He ended the season. I like Levis. I think Levis has a lot of potential. I think Levis, does all the right things, and I think that his teammates like him. But I think he makes too many boneheaded mistakes, and he gets hurt too much. And I'm worried that that's a problem. Now, a lot of you have gone from, I hate Will Levis, like that guy on Twitter, to I love Will Levis. And I'm thinking about that polarization, And I'm trying to figure out what this means for the next coach. Because as Charles Robinson said on Robbie and Rex Road yesterday, there's a lot of these coaches out there that don't like Will Levis.
Some guys that are like, I don't know if the quarterback position is resolved. Like, I personally, you have to be a sort of a Levis fan when you go in there. So that impacts, who's coming in, particularly given that at least the thought process of the candidates is that, Levis was a Rand and Amy influenced draft choice. So if you come in and you're like, I don't know, Levis, this is ultimately going to be the quarterback. Do you create friction for yourself when you come into the job? And
okay. So Charles is like, there's a lot of people that I don't know if I like Levis. But then the people that are around Levis, I mean, they love him. And not only that, they didn't love Levis here, or they would have drafted him with the 11th overall pick. And I heard Karski say something like, just because you didn't draft the guy in the first round doesn't mean that you don't like him. I'm like, it does at quarterback. If you need a quarterback and you don't take a quarterback in the first round when you think that guy's a first-round quarterback, it means you don't like him. It means Arthur did not like Will Levis. It means Josh McDaniels did not like Will Levis. It means Dave Canales and Todd Bowles and Jason Light did not like Will Levis. Because if they liked Will Levis, they would have drafted Will Levis and they would have kicked Baker to the can. Like, that's what they do. And so a lot of people in the league didn't like Will Levis. But then the people around Will Levis, they love him. This was Liam Cohen to me on XM before the draft talking about Will Levis.
Will's a special kid. Will's the type of kid that if you're looking for the first guy in the building, last one to leave, type of guy that's going to just every single meeting, every single walkthrough, every single practice is going to be treated like a football game. Not a practice, but a game. In terms of the way that he goes about his business, the way that he operates, it's game-like every single day. And if you want your franchise quarterback to act as such, that's how he is. That's how he handles himself. And then, oh, by the way, he transfers from Penn State. He's academic All-American and all those things. And my father-in-law is sitting in the stands at the NFL Combine watching Will throw, and I'm down there watching with some of the coaches. And Will's former academic counselor at Penn State was standing in the stands watching Will throw. I traveled from Penn State. So that's the kind of kid that he is. I don't know how many other guys, former academic advisors, were in stands watching them throw.
I mean, that is pretty telling, right? This dude freaking loves Will Levis. He loves him. Mark Stoops, SEC Media Days. I said to Mark, Mark, what do you make of Levis and the Titans and all of this? Tell me about Levis. Here's what he said.
Well, the first thing that he has, I mean, everybody's going to expect me to talk about the enormous talent that he has, but really it's the work ethic that he has. And at that level, I know everybody says that, right? I mean, every single person, every single quarterback is going to say that. I can promise you from what I've seen that he's going to work. And I know how hard it is to be successful at that position in the NFL. I also think it's very important to have the right system and the right people around him to help that quarterback be successful. But I know he will work, extremely hard. And I mean, he'll be relentless. I mean, it's not about being a starter. It's not about money. It's about winning and performing for his players. And I think that's the biggest thing with him is he is ultra competitive.
Okay. Now, look, I've been bullcrapped in my life, and I understand, hey, guys are doing interviews about somebody. They're going to say something nice. If Liam Cohen didn't want to do that interview, he wouldn't have done it before the draft. And I don't think Mark Stoops is lying there about how much he loves Will Levis. So the people around Levis absolutely love him. The people that don't know Levis, like old buddy on Twitter whose picture is now Will Levis when he was, Chris Ballard, so stupid. They don't like Will Levis, which takes me to the coach. How important is it that the coach that is hired by the Tennessee Titans loves Will Levis? Is it an absolute non-negotiable? Is it a, hey, come in, I know you didn't love him. He took a bag of chips out of the meeting without asking. I know you got mad about that. But just be around the kid. Just trust me. And then they'll grow that belief? Or do you want somebody like Liam Cohen? And I'm not advocating for Liam Cohen to be the head coach of the Titans, though I do think if Liam Cohen had stayed at the Rams and they had had the season that they had this year, I do think Liam Cohen would be the favorite for this job. But do you look at a guy like that and say, I want somebody like that to be the head coach that is all in on Will Levis? And I don't know how I would feel as an owner. The one thing I would tell all these candidates, or I wouldn't tell them directly, but I'd make sure that Rand communicated this to their agents. I want the God's honest truth on Levis. I do not want to hear what Bobby Slowick thinks I want to hear about Will Levis. I want to know what Bobby Slowick thinks of Will Levis. I want to know what Brian Callahan thinks of Will Levis. And if there's somebody that walks in there and says, Bobby Slowick sits down and says, I wanted him. The rest of the owner in Houston wanted Stroud, and, D'Amico kind of leaned more towards Stroud. I wanted Levis, and I would have taken him with the second pick, and I would have. If that's the case, you can't fake that belief. Either you have it or you don't. The best way for the Titans to get good anytime in the near future is for Will Levis to take off. It's just something to think about. And it's something to keep in mind for all these people that don't like Levis, is how many people have been around Levis that really do like Levis. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of people that liked Levis, boy, you guys were hard on Mel Kiper Jr. last year when he was sitting there comparing Levis to Matthew Stafford and Troy Aikman, and you guys got mad. What did Mel think of Will Levis's rookie year? We'll get to that next. Fireball whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to start your weekend, to ignite the night, than to do it with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. Everybody's got their favorite spots. They hang out with their best friends. And the thing you got to do when you're there is kick it off with a round of Fireball shots. We got football all weekend to celebrate. We got hockey this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. That's Fireball whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
she did the right thing in terms of not trying to trade him. I'm not sure she did the right thing thinking she can replace him, especially when you go through their drafts and you look at all the failed first-round picks. And look, Mike wanted Ryan Cowling. What Adam said, I've heard the same thing. I think it's completely accurate. And they decided to hire Rand, and Rand comes from a different program, a different set of circumstances, and he wants to run his team. The press release that she issued that said that she thinks she has a bright young quarterback, for me, would be alarming because I'm not sure I'm there on Will Levis yet. I don't see that. I haven't seen that in his play as of yet.
Mike Lombardi saying, hold on now. Her referring to Will Levis, franchise quarterback. Whoa. That would be alarming to me, former NFL general manager. And let me say this. I don't think Levis is a franchise quarterback yet. The Miami game showed me that Will Levis has the potential to be a franchise quarterback, that he has the potential to be in between Justin Herbert and Dan Marino. Potential. Not that he's there yet. But as we've said, when it comes to Levis, either you are all freaking in like Liam Cohen and Mark Stoops and everybody, Amy Adams Strunk, or you are super skeptical, like those coaches that talk to Charles Robinson or Bill Polian or Mike Lombardi or whatever it may be. Mel Kiper Jr. got beaten like a piñata by you guys for a couple of reasons, but in large part this past year because of his belief in Will Levis. Every time Levis would come up, he would talk about how he looks like Matthew Stafford, or he looks like Troy Aikman, or he looks like whomever. By the way, I watched Stafford this weekend against the Lions. I saw some throws from Stafford, especially where he dropped that to that sidearm angle, that I'm like, I've seen Levis throw the ball like that. Like, I've seen some Levis in that. Like, I've seen a little bit of that. Not consistent enough, but I've seen a little bit of that. Well, Mel Kiper Jr. broke down the Titans, and here was his evaluation of Will Levis's rookie year.
Will showed a lot of promise. He looked really good. I watched him every week, and he got pounded. And you knew the injury was going to happen. It just was a matter of time. Because that offensive line was Ole blocking. They were behind the sticks with pre-snap penalties. They didn't give the guy a shot. Drop passes. Again, even against Houston, the second time, DeAndre Hopkins had a key drop in that game. Think about Burks, a key drop late in the year. The second one against Houston early in that game when it was a beautiful throw by Will Levis. So Levis's toughness, his arm strength, everything he did. You saw the Miami game, the Atlanta game, everything in between was outstanding. He had a couple games where he wasn't. The Tampa Bay game, that first Jacksonville game, but overall showed a lot of talent to be that maybe franchise quarterback.
Again, I don't disagree with any of that. The maybe franchise quarterback. Line sucked, receivers dropped passes. You know, the very first or second play against the Colts, C.J. Stroud fired a bomb to Nico Collins. I think it was a touchdown. And I'm like, Levis threw that same ball to Traylon Burks last week. Traylon Burks just didn't catch it. That being said, Levis did a lot of boneheaded stuff. The interception to the big fat guy in Miami, and then trying to ram his shoulder into a 340-pound man at the end of it because he was frustrated that he threw a pick six. Dumb. Levis trying to take on DBs, dropping the shoulder. Dumb. Levis against the Texans, rolling to the left. Traylon Burks is coming open. DeAndre Hopkins is covered. Throws it to DeAndre. It gets intercepted. Dumb. He did dumb stuff at Kentucky, too. When I watched him play Georgia, he took a whole shot to the end zone, and there was a safety sitting right there. Intercepted. Dumb. So he's got to cut that out. And I think a lot of people assume that he will. But again, we've assumed that for a lot of guys that never cut the dumb stuff out, like Jay Cutler. Sometimes the guys win in spite of the dumb stuff, like Brett Favre or Josh Allen. But they need to get a coach in here who can kind of get rid of some of that. And then he's injury prone. Now, is he injury prone because the last 2 years he's had terrible offensive lines? A fair argument to make. But again, 3 years as a starter, 2 years where he's gotten hurt a bunch. And he got hurt in training camp where they're not allowed to hit the quarterback. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. One texter says, if Bobby Slowick had walked in on if Bobby Slowick had wanted Will Levis instead of C.J. Stroud, shouldn't we question Slowick's judgment? Because Stroud seems to have done all right. Of course Stroud's done all right. Who's his coach? Somebody yesterday tweeted me and said, I don't want Bobby Slowick. He's never developed a quarterback. I'm like, I'm sorry. Who did the Texans draft first last year? How's he doing? Oh, Jared, C.J. Stroud, so good. He didn't need any coaching. Uh-huh. Then why was the consensus number 1 pick Bryce Young? Coaching does matter. Also, Slowick was the passing game coordinator the year before in San Francisco. And they developed a young quarterback by the name of Brock Purdy. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. So, regardless of what exactly Slowick's contribution was each of the last 2 years, but he has been a coordinator for the 2 best rookie quarterbacks in each of the last 2 years. So that might mean something. But everybody's like, oh no, C.J. Stroud, he's so good. Okay. Coaching doesn't matter at all. One texter says, I can understand coaches not liking Will Levis because of the injuries, but I felt like he played well enough to prove that he could be good. He at least proved that he is not the guy. He is not the guy for right now. Not the guy, is the guy, whatever. Here's what I would say about that. That sounds good. Because in theory, I think it's right. Will Levis is going to be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans in 2024. And if Levis bombs, then they'll go draft the quarterback the next year, or they'll trade or sign or something. If Levis pops, then maybe you have your quarterback for the next 15 years. But it's hard for a prospective coach, knowing that he may only get one chance. It's hard for a prospective coach that doesn't necessarily believe in the quarterback to say, well, I'll roll with it right now. Because as we've seen in a lot of organizations, I mean, let's say that everything the Titans are selling about Rand Carthon, that the first year was unfair to evaluate Rand Carthon because of how much, as Buck reported, he placated to Mike Vrabel. Okay? Well, he signed up for that. So if you become the Titans coach, and if you don't like Levis, you signed up for it. And then if Levis stinks, then you enter the next year on the hot seat, because these jobs, 2-3 years, that's it. And then you're looking for a quarterback, and it's tough. One texter says, you say teams didn't like Levis because they waited to take him until the second round. Philly must not have liked Jalen Hurts either, getting him in the second round. Who cares, Jared? Let's see if Levis can throw the ball and stay healthy this year. Philadelphia drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round in 2020. Doug Peterson benched Carson Wentz in favor of Jalen Hurts at the end of the year. And Doug Peterson got fired. And Nick Sirianni got hired from the Colts under Frank Reich to be the head coach. And you know why Nick Sirianni got hired? To work with Carson Wentz, who they drafted with the second overall pick. Carson Wentz is the reason why Carson Wentz wasn't their quarterback. He didn't want to be there. So they traded him and said, all right, let's see what Jalen's got. Just like Brock Purdy goes in when Jimmy G breaks his foot. All right, let's see what Brock's got. Just like Tom Brady went in with Drew Bledsoe. All right, see what Tommy's got. There is a difference between that and, all right, here we are. This is the guy, and you've got to make him into a franchise quarterback. Because if you think somebody is a franchise quarterback, you draft them in the first round. That doesn't mean that the Titans couldn't have lucked into something. But it does mean that, like a lot of these people that don't like Levis right now, that they may not have liked him either. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The Titans, we will get to your phones. I promise we will get to your phones. I have a Fireball hot take first, though. The Titans have completed their interview with Bobby Slowick yesterday. They was announced that they're going to interview David Shaw, which I think is a total fugazi interview. Like, I think there is no way they're hiring him to be the coach. And I've got a hot take. We'll do that next. And I promise phones, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. how much of Stroud's success is coaching and how much of Stroud's success is Stroud?
I think there's a good combination of both. Stroud, with his arm talent and with his demeanor, lends himself to good coaching. I mean, a coach knows that if he can put him in the right spot, he'll deliver the ball not only to the right place, but at the right time. He's got the accuracy to put the ball where the offensive coordinator or the quarterback's coach wants him to put it. So they know that, and that's the start of it, right? And then when it comes to the coach helping him beyond that at both places, Ohio State and Houston, the play calling helped him with scheming open receivers. I mean, at Ohio State, Ryan Day schemed for him in ways that were just flat out unfair. And Coach Slowick in Houston does the same thing. It's not all scheming to make it easy, but at the same time, there's enough scheming to make it easy that they can continue to move the chains and he can continue to grow not just confidence in his game, but his teammates can grow in their confidence in him.
There you go. That was Trevor giving us some of it's coaching, some of it's Stroud. So I have a hot take on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, and then we're right to your phones. Here's my hot take. This time next year, C.J. Stroud will not be as good as you think he is today. And I can guarantee some of you are like, oh, what? C.J. Stroud is the man. But I think Bobby Slowick is going to leave. I think there's a really good chance he ends up as the head coach here. Bobby Slowick is going to leave, and they're going to be stuck in a position where they're going to have to find the next guru, and this is going to continue if he ends up playing well, but they're going to have to find the next guru, and I don't think they will find the next guru. And so they could bring in Kubiak's son to be the OC, but I think John McClain says they're going to promote the quarterback's coach, Gerard Johnson. They're going to make him the OC, and he's got 1 year of experience as the assistant Vikings quarterback's coach and quarterback's coach this year. And I think there will be a drop-off. Now, I still think Stroud will be good, but I just don't think he will be as good as he is now. Just like I think there was a drop-off with Jalen Hurts after he lost Nick Sirianni. There was a drop-off with Ryan Tannehill when he lost Arthur Smith. There's always a drop-off when you lose the coordinator, unless you're Patrick Mahomes. And I don't think Stroud's that. And not only that, Andy Reid still stays there. Sean McVay still stays there. That's why you have the guru coach, because you're going to lose the offensive coordinators, but you just keep the machine rolling. And that's my hot take. I think DeMeco Ryans is an excellent coach, but he's a defensive coach. And he's not going to be able to make up when you lose that great play caller. He's not going to be able to make up for that. So my hot take is all of you were like, oh, who cares about Bobby Slowick? He's got C.J. Stroud. I'd be good with C.J. Stroud. I don't know. I think that Stroud will regress from year 1 to year 2 if Bobby Slowick's not his OC. Dylan in Antioch has been waiting very patiently and is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Dylan.
Hey, thanks for taking my call there, Jared and Ian. So that Angelo guy from Philly, that's a perfect example of how the national media sees Vrabel outside of Nashville. I just want to point that out real quick. And I do think Brian Callahan will get the job. They've met the Rooney Rule requirements, which I quite frankly feel pretty bad for David Shaw.
They are yet to do that. Shaw would be the first of the two, and then they'd have to do another one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the rule, like you said, it's in good nature, but it's misused. And, it seems like they're very urgently trying to hire Callahan before anyone else may interview him. But I wanted to ask you about Slowick because I know Slowick's your guy. But there's this whole narrative, even John McClain has said it, about how he's not ready to be a head coach. What does that mean? Has anyone followed up with that? If it's because he's too young, there's a lot of young coordinators that get jobs. And there's also this other thing that the players said it was us, not him. I don't know if they literally said that, but I've heard that on the radio too. So
who said that?
What is up with this? It's been, I think, Caroline Williams-Dietmans said something like that.
Well, I got to tell you, I think that's bullcrap. Because Brevin Jordan,
follow up
Dylan,
on that, please.
Yeah, thank you for your call. Brevin Jordan has been in the NFL for like 3 years now. And I've never seen Brevin Jordan take a tight end screen 80 yards down the field like he did the other day. And why was there just green grass and big fat linemen in front of him? because Bobby Slowick schemed it up. Alex Smith went over this on Countdown, where he's like, they run a play where C.J. Stroud boots to the right, and they fake the run. They fake the run to the left. Then he boots to the right. Then they take the entire defense over to the right. They bring everybody, and all of a sudden, Dalton Schultz is running free on the left side, and C.J. Stroud turns around and puts the ball right there for a touchdown. Now, did Stroud have to put the ball there? Yes, he did. But the guy's wide open. So the idea that it's like, oh, no, screw the coach. It's not us. Nico Collins has been in the NFL before. He didn't lighten it up like that. In fact, I go back to the JV Texans that came in here and beat the Titans. And again, the Texans been throwing the ball all over the yard. All of a sudden, they got their junior varsity team out there. And what did the Texans do? They ran the ball up the middle in the entire second half with Devin Singletary the entire game. Why? Because Bobby Slowick made the adjustment. Bobby Slowick realized they can't stop this. So we're just going to keep doing it. We're not going to have Case Keenum try to fit the football into these tight windows when we've got a bunch of backup receivers out there. We're going to run the ball. And the Titans ultimately couldn't stop it against a JV team. That's coaching, folks. This idea that, oh, no, it's us, not the coach. Shut up, if that's what they're saying. Like, let's give you a bad coach. Let's send Todd Downing to the Houston Texans, and then let's see what you guys – oh, is it still us? Because you guys have had some bad coaches. You guys had Tim Kelly last year. How'd that work out? Cedric is up next here on the program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Cedric?
Man, listen, that's 2 weeks of my life as a Titans fan since we went to the Super Bowl. No more Coach Meathead. I hope he goes to Philly so they can put his ass in the fry, light him up. Now, listen, Jared, early in the year I called you and I told you, man, my get you to see the light with Coach Meathead, and you did. Now I got get you to see the light. It does not matter if we hire an offensive. It is important that we hire the right guy. There are 8 coaches left in the playoffs right now. 4 of them are offensive guys, and 4 of them are not. Those guys have hired the right guy, and the right guy for us is the defensive coordinator in Detroit. And listen, when I get off the phone, I hope Ian's got it teed up. He's got it teed up. I hope so.
I got it ready.
You got it?
I got it.
Listen, Stillman, you're gonna love this, man. This guy has the vision. He's got everything that.
Well, I'm
Amy
glad he
and
can
Red
share it because
want.
they don't share stuff around here apparently when it comes to vision.
Oh no! Listen, man, Aaron Glenn's got it. He's got it, baby. He's got it. And when he hires the right coaches and the right coordinators and all that, man, it is going to be beautiful. Ian, I'm about to hang up, man. Would you play this for Stillman, please? I got to get to YouTube because I want to see his face. Y'all be easy, man. And listen, Coach
Cedric,
Glenn,
thank you.
Welcome to Nashville, baby.
Thank you. Play the cut.
What's the biggest thing you learned about being a head coach just from being around him?
The number one thing I think is important is, just the collaboration with the GM and the owner and making sure that vision, that collective vision is the same. Because once that's intact and you keep, all 3 of you guys are saying, old women are saying the same thing, that feeds down to the staff, then feeds down to the players. And, man, they just hear the same vision over and over again. And you talk about culture. Culture is about people. And you bring the right people in, you're going to have the right culture.
Okay. Sounds like he's been doing some talking to Rand Carthon because that sounds exactly like what Rand Carthon says. Maybe there is something
Cedric
to Aaron
was
Glenn
on,
here.
hey, with that quote.
Maybe there is some. I have dismissed Aaron Glenn, especially because they've decided to interview David Shaw, and I think that tells me that their search is over. They know who they're going to hire. Now they have to meet the Rooney Rule requirements. So, but maybe it's over because Aaron Glenn's the coach. I don't know. He just got done with an interview with the Falcons. I think he's supposed to interview with the Titans later today. I'm not going to rule it out now that is. We have heard 2 things about Aaron Glenn that have kind of, started to open some eyes. We'll get to the other one next, and then we'll get to your phone. Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
You got a busy couple days coming up. How do you just balance everything, like everything you need
The
to do?
main thing is the main thing. Just like I said last week, man, we're trying to beat Tampa. All right, this is an opportunity for all of us as an organization, as a staff, as players, to get a chance to compete for the Super Bowl. So the thing we got to make sure we put everything we can into winning this game right here. And for me, that's the most important thing.
Game plan, though, is mostly in, like after today, right? So do you study the team that you're in?
Hayes never in the barn. I learned that from Bill Parcells way back. He hated when people said that. All right, so the Hayes, you could always change something because you're always looking at tape. You're always trying to figure out how you put your guys in the best position. So we're always trying to figure things out as we go through the week. Now, listen, these things are going to come up. Listen, nothing's confirmed just yet. I will tell you that. All right, but when they do come up, listen, I do the interview and they have a decision to make after that, and I look forward to having them.
You have to spend time preparing for those interviews, and how do you fit that into your 24-hour?
I prepare by being myself. Listen, I've been playing this game for a long time. I've been coaching it for a while. So the questions that they ask, there's a good chance I got them already in my head. So, like I say, I look forward to them. Nothing's confirmed yet, but when they do happen, I'm sure you guys will know.
Good answers from Aaron Glenn, because he will be coaching on Sunday against Tampa Bay. Now, he already did his interview today with the Falcons. I think we know they're probably going Belichick. And who knows? He's supposedly supposed to interview with the Titans today. So he may be meeting with the Titans right now. Cedric just pointed Ian in the direction of Aaron Glenn, talking about how great collaboration is between the coach, the owner, and the GM, and how that's the most important thing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like he took that right out of the Rand Carthon textbook for what to say. And then Corey Curtis was on our show earlier today from News 2. And I asked him who he thought the coach was going to be, and he said he had an inkling about Aaron Glenn. Here's what he said.
I think from the jump, they've had a pretty good idea of who they want. It's just a matter of whether they can get them or not.
What are the inklings?
Me, I keep hearing a lot about Aaron Glenn, and his name comes up over and over and over again to me, and so and I know fans are not happy when I tell them that. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's just the name I keep hearing. Obviously Brian Callahan's a good candidate. I think Ben Johnson's another guy that they like a lot. But I think there are people with deeper pockets for Ben Johnson who are going to go after him.
So what makes you think Aaron Glenn, like outside of Dan Graziano projecting it, just speculating it on ESPN.com, what have you heard that leads you to Aaron Glenn?
Before this ever started, I had somebody bring up Aaron Glenn's name to me, saying
somebody important,
somebody I trust, and then I asked somebody else I trust. I even said, "Is Aaron Glenn the next head coach?" And they didn't say that he was the next head coach, but they said they like him and somebody else an awful lot. And I'm like, okay, Aaron Glenn is way up high on the list, and so we'll wait and we'll see.
No. Oh, no. And I have nothing against Aaron Glenn. I wish his defenses were a little bit better on paper. That being said, they do play with tenacity, which I like. And Aaron Glenn's got great energy. He is a freaking accomplished player. And he, I think he would be good for the fans and all that. I do think he'd be a good leader. The NFLPA surveys say the players freaking love him. That's great. But I don't want a defensive coach. I want the guru. I want the tight pants. I want the play sheet. I want the latte. I want the headset. I want the offenses that they run these plays, and you see guys just wide freaking open, and it's like, holy crap. How did that guy get so open for that 96-yard touchdown? I want the guru. And I will say this about Aaron Glenn. And this is not an Amy Adams Strunk, I'm going to tell you. This is just reality. If you hire Aaron Glenn or any of these other defensive coaches over the gurus and it does not work out for you, the fans will never forgive you. And you would say, well, they'll just fire that guy and hire the next coach. And in most cases, you're right. But you moved on for Mike Vrabel for this. And Mike Vrabel is immensely popular. So if you moved on from some crap-ass coach and it was like, hey, this coach stunk, and so what we're going to do is we're going to move into this direction with this coach, and everybody, it doesn't work out. But if you mess this one up, these fans may never forgive you. I don't know if Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders today, wanted to hire Antonio Pierce or not, but he did. Because after he bungled the Rich Bisaccia interim coach, Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, and then had another interim coach have success, he had no choice. His players would not forgive him. So, look, if this were 5 years ago and I wasn't a firm believer that the game was headed in the direction of the guru, then I would want Aaron Glenn. But I don't, because I want the guru. I heard Big Joe say this the other day. He's like, well, who cares if you just go hire the best offensive coordinator, and then you lose the offensive coordinator, just like Nick Sirianni lost his offensive coordinator, and they stink. I want the guru who calls the plays. There's a reason why San Francisco loses their staff every year. You know, Shanahan has lost 2 defensive coaches, and I think he's lost like 3 or 4 offensive coaches. It doesn't matter because he calls plays. But I got to tell you, I was firmly of the belief that it was Callahan or Slowick when I saw the David Shaw report today from Adam Schefter. And now, after hearing that cut, plus Corey Curtis and the Inklings and the word on the street he's hearing, I'm getting worried that Aaron Glenn might actually be the next coach of the Titans.
Don't forget Dan Graziano.
Oh, yeah, he just threw that out there, though, right? That was just kind of a shoot from the hip.
I guess.
Like,
I
he
don't know.
said in the thing, like, this is the hard one to project. I don't have a clue. But maybe he knows something that he's just not willing to say. I'm not interested in Aaron Glenn. I'll just tell you this right now. I am not interested in a defensive coach. And I will go freaking bananas if they do this. Now, look, I'll turn the page after they do it. They'll do it. Jared, what's your reaction? I'll go nuts. Then they'll have the press conference. Then we'll react to that. I won't every day come in here and say, I told you not to hire that guy. But I will be completely and totally against it. Oh, my goodness. Texter says, I would rather swing and miss and be terrible with a guy like Bobby Slowick than hire Aaron Glenn and be a fringe playoff team that gets bounced in the first 2 rounds pretty much like they have been the last handful of years. Agreed. One texter says, wow, thanks, Cedric. Another decade of garbage lies ahead for the Titans. Texter says, Titans might win, but we won't be as explosive on offense. It'll be like Vrabel never left. Same direction, not a different vision, just different asses filling the same seats. Oof. I mean, I tell you, I hate this. I thought it was really, Slowick, Callahan, and that's it. And now, when Corey says, someone I trust told me Aaron Glenn, and I've been hearing, oh, God. A defensive coach. Can we play that cut Cedric had you cut up? Can we play that again? Because this is, if it was like, hey, man, here are the cue cards. We're going to put this into the teleprompter for you when you sit down with Amy Adams Strunk, because this is exactly what that woman wants to hear. Play the cut.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about being a head coach just from being around you?
The number one thing I think is important is, just the collaboration with the GM and the owner and making sure that vision, that collective vision is the same. Because once that's intact and all 3 of you guys are saying, old women are saying the same thing, that feeds down to the staff, then feeds down to the players. And, man, they just hear the same vision over and over again. And you talk about culture. Culture is about people. And you bring the right people in, you're going to have the right culture.
Rand says that all the time about people. He says it all the time. Oh, no.
He even made to include, in case it was a woman owner, in there as well.
Well, they have a woman owner in Detroit.
So there you go.
No! no, 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 no defensive coaches. No the guru. That's where it's headed. The only good thing you have on your team right now, and we don't even know if he's good or not, is your quarterback, who needs to be developed. No, 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 no. What do you think, Ian? Glenn's the leader in the clubhouse now, don't you think?
I don't know about that, but that was a pretty Titans-esque 101 response there.
I mean,
all
again,
the
that's like-
buzzwords.
That's like he looked at the flashcard, like he's been practicing at home.
Yes.
Oh. Chad Withrow will join us from Outkick. And I was having a good Friday. Chad will join us next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. I was in such a good mood until Cedric called in today. I was in such a good mood. I woke up 6:04 this morning. Adam Schefter tweeted out the Titans are interviewing David Shaw, the old Stanford coach. The Titans are not going to hire David Shaw, which means that's a Rooney Rule interview, so they are ready to move and move quickly. And they interviewed Bobby Slowick last night, so I could see, hey, Bobby Slowick had a good interview. All right, let's get this out of the way. Let's move quickly. They're going to bring Brian Callahan in for a second interview. Brian Callahan interviewed good. He's our guy. All right, bring him in for the second one. Lock it up. Here we go. Fine with that. Then Cedric had Ian find the cut of Aaron Glenn, in which Aaron Glenn talked about the one thing he's learned about being a coach is the collaboration and vision with the coach, GM, and the owner, and how important that was. And it sounded exactly like it was coming from Rand Carthon. And I thought, oh, no, no, no. And then Corey Curtis said earlier today on the show that he had heard that, just somebody he trusts just kept bringing up Aaron Glenn's name. And I thought, oh, no, 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 no. Chad Withrow joins us from Outkick now to react. Chad, I want the guru. I want the tight pants. I want the big play sheet. I want the ball cap. I want all of it. I want the, eagle right, queen nine, double eagle, whatever, the 18-word plays. I want it all. And I am scared to death the Titans are going to hire a defensive coach. Your thoughts?
Well, Bobby Slowick has called plays for this is 1 year, right, that he's actually called plays?
Correct.
In the NFL. So, look, you're going to bank on, hey, this is the next Sean McVay, right? That's the me or Kyle Shanahan is what you're going with Slowick. That's the idea. We don't know that.
Yes.
We just talked to John McClain 10 minutes ago. And I asked him if he's come down from his stance at all on whether or not Bobby Slowick is still a year away from getting that head coaching job, because he's thought all along he needs another year at least before he's a head coach. He softened his stance a bit in this visit with us on whether or not he's going to have to wait a year. He said that there may be one offer to him this go around in this coaching cycle. So I think that he's a possibility for the Titans. I think they should go offense. Normally, I don't like when an NFL team or a college program just automatically goes to one side of the ball or the other. Mm-hmm. Usually, it's just the opposite of what didn't work before. You fire a coach on the defensive side of the ball, you hire an offensive guy. You fire an offensive guy, you're going with a defensive guy next. I don't like that domino effect.
You fire a mean guy, you hire a nice guy. You fire a nice guy, you hire a mean guy.
Just hire the best coach. Right? I don't care if it's offense, defense, mean guy, nice guy, whatever. I just want any job, college or NFL, to go out, identify the best coach for them, and hire that guy. So let's examine best coach for them when I'm talking about this. Not best coach for them. What do the Titans ultimately want with this hire? They want someone that's going to be easy to collaborate with and work with on a daily basis, that is nicer than Mike Vrabel, that is going to get along with everything they want to do. So let's go down the list of who's going to be the most agreeable of doing that. Maybe it is Bobby Slowick. He's a young guy. He's been a play caller for 1 year. He may not see a better job out there that's offering him. He may think, hey, this is a good opportunity for me with Will Levis. I like him as a quarterback. I don't know if he does or not. But maybe he likes Will Levis and he says, I can be agreeable to that. I can come in and just coach the team and let everything else happen around me. But when you eliminate all the best and biggest resumes on the list, when you're not going to talk to Bill Belichick, when you're not going to talk to Jim Harbaugh, when you're going into it from that standpoint, I think you're looking for someone that's going to be pleasant to work with ultimately. I still lean towards maybe it's going to be an offensive guy they land on. Maybe it's Callahan. Maybe it's Slowick. But I think you're on to something, Jared, that the most agreeable of those names that will collaborate the way they want with Rand Carthon and with Amy Adams-Strunk just might be Aaron Glenn. And Titans fans may need to buckle up for that possibility. But regardless, they're not going to hire some firebrand that's coming in here like the alpha dog that's going to run things his way or the highway. They're going to hire someone that's agreeable.
But I would argue that Kyle Shanahan is not considered agreeable in San Francisco, and they want the San Francisco model, which, again, I think in large part is based off of Shanahan. So if you want the San Francisco model, don't you have to go try to find the next Shanahan?
Well, how much dealings do you think Rand Carthon had with Shanahan? Do you think that he was probably answering to Shanahan?
Oh,
And not the other way around? I mean, look, I see Mike Vrabel, who had a lot of success as a head coach here, get fired, and Rand Carthon is still here. So I feel like they want someone who's going to do, if not do exactly what they say, that's going to be friendlier to work with on a daily basis. So that's not going to be someone coming. I don't think Rand Carthon is hiring the next Kyle Shanahan. And keep in mind, it is Rand Carthon doing the interviews and then handing these interviews off to Amy Adams Strunk eventually to approve. Do we really think Rand Carthon is going to go hire someone that's going to boss him around? I don't think so. I just don't think that's going to be this hire. I'm with you. If you want to replicate the San Francisco model, then you hire someone who's probably very demanding with the front office and gets what they want most of the time, and that's Shanahan. But they do not want to hand things over to one person. They want this to be a team effort. They want this to be a collaboration first and foremost. They said that in the statement, that second paragraph of what Amy Adams Strunk released when she fired Mike Vrabel told me everything I needed to know. They're not looking for the best coach. They're looking for the best coach that will go along with their plan and their organizational chart and that will work well with the GM. There's an addendum there. It's not find the best guy. If you want the best guy track record-wise, go hire Jim Harbaugh. He's 44-19 and got the 49ers to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick. If you want to go hire the best coach, hire him. They're not going to do that. They're not going to hire someone like Jim Harbaugh. They're going to hire someone they think is good that will work with the front office. Titans fans must prepare themselves for this eventuality.
Do you think if they hire Aaron Glenn that – I mean, this is my theory, and I want your opinion on this. If they hire Aaron Glenn and it doesn't work because of how popular Mike Vrabel is, these fans will never forgive the owner.
Oh, I think these fans will forgive the owner for anything. The Titans fans aren't going anywhere. This is not a fan base that it just runs. I mean, look how they defend everything. The same fans who are defending the same fans who are defending. Oh, Mike Vrabel's great. I mean, this is personnel based, and Mike Vrabel's done nothing wrong, right? We heard that for weeks. If you ever, Jared, on this show, question Mike Vrabel, a lot of fans would go after you and say, Mike Vrabel, he's going to get a job anywhere if you let him go. You can't let Mike Vrabel go. He's the NFL Coach of the Year a couple of years ago. And what happened the moment Mike Vrabel got fired? A lot of those same vocal Titans fans, oh, Amy Adams Strunk, boy, look at the set on her. Look at the balls that she has to fire Mike Vrabel. She's going to get things done the right way. He wouldn't work right with Rand Carthon. We got to get him out of town. That's the way fans are. They're going to defend whatever the next move is.
I will say this, though. To your point,
they're not going to go after Amy Adams Strunk for this reason. The only way they get rid of Amy Adams Strunk is if she decides to sell the team.
Sure.
So they're forced to live with Amy Adams Strunk no matter what. So they're going to defend her to the hilt.
So I would agree with you except for this. The reaction to the Robinson firing is exactly what you described. They were in J-Rob we trust, and they fired him like, yeah, good job in the middle of a season when we're in first place and we won the division back-to-back years. Yeah! But Vrabel was different. Like, Vrabel was an incredibly polarizing decision. And I think it's going to be like the A.J. Brown trade, and she is John Robinson for the fans' ire. If they hire a defensive coach and it doesn't work, I think the fans are going to be furious with her. And it does matter because they are expecting people to buy PSLs in this new stadium. And if the team has sucked for 5 years and the fans have no faith in the owner, that's going to be a problem.
Look, maybe I'm looking at different people on social media and with Titans fans I talk to. I don't think the reaction is that different. I think they flip pretty quick to, well, she did what she had to with Mike Vrabel. Now, where the different response is coming from is nationally. There wasn't as big of a defense of John Robinson when he was fired. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen is national media, they're shocked. Football people around the NFL are shocked that Mike Vrabel got fired with the Titans, because they view him as such a great head coach. I think that's where the different response has come from. Look, I'd like to think that Titans fans are going to hold ownership accountable if things go south with this hire. I do, but I think ultimately, they're going to find ways to forgive ownership because they're fans. They want to see the team do well. And if this next coach works out, let's say it's Aaron Glenn, and Aaron Glenn doesn't work out in 2 or 3 years, well, they're going to hope that the next coach gets it right. I mean, look at how things went in Detroit for coach after coach and coach after coach and the Jets, and fans will keep coming back. I don't think there's anything that's completely unforgivable.
Do you think that it makes any sense to not hire the offensive guru coach when the only path out of the basement for the Titans is to develop Will Levis?
They should hire an offensive guy. I mean, I think that the first vision you have to get from any coaching candidate when you sit down and talk to them is, what is your vision at quarterback and for this offense? And, I mean, look, if they're honest and they're like, hey, I'm not in love with Will Levis, I think we can do something else there. He's a second-round pick. It's not the end of the world. If we go in a different direction, well, I'm willing to hear that. If I'm ownership, okay, tell me why. Let's go deeper in that. But the ultimate deal is you got to have someone. I don't want someone who's going to come in and just talk great about Will Levis if they don't believe Will Levis is going to be great, right?
Sure.
That's what I'm trying to say. And that kind of goes back to what's best for them. And what's best for them might be the person that's most agreeable to them and what they want to hear. I don't know that that's what the Titans need right now. They need someone with a clear purpose and identity of what the offense is going to be, whether that be with Will Levis or not. And I'm not saying that someone should come in and say Will Levis is trash, get rid of him. If they like him, great. If they know what the offense should look like around Will Levis, then you need to hear that person out. But I do lean towards you need to hire an offensive head coach that certainly has a clear vision, not someone who's going to go hire an offensive coordinator that's going to then pick that person out that has the vision. Someone has got a vision for what this offense should be with Will Levis.
Chad Withrow is with us from Outkick. We will hit the hot seat and do it next here on Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. White Bison. That's right. White Bison is my favorite local coffee shop, and I don't know about you guys, but it is getting freaking cold outside. It has been cold all week. You're going to hit your local coffee shop. Stay warm and cozy with their new honey-based drinks, like a cinnamon beehive latte, an iced honey nut macchiato, and a vanilla rooibos tea latte. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download the app. So when you download the Twice Daily and White Bison app, you can enroll in the rewards program, and you can place orders on the go anytime and automatically earn on every single purchase. Download the app to order ahead, earn rewards, get one free every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. White Bison Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, as always, we're joined by Chad Withrow from Outkick. It is time for the hot seat. Chad, as I ask you every week, do you have a thought or do you want to go to the phones? Or do you want to
go right to the hot seat right now, Jared? Let's get it rolling.
Okay, Ian, you got my bell for me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, number one, give me your top choice for the Titans head coaching position.
Top choice, Jared, I hate to side with you on this, but you've convinced me. It's Bobby Slowick because the ultimate. So I look at ceiling and floor of this thing, right? The ultimate ceiling to me is that you hire the next offensive super heavyweight guy. That's a young dude that's going to be there for a long time. I'm talking about a guy who's going to be there 15 to 20 years. You're going to have someone there that's got Mike Tomlin-like longevity with the organization. And that's someone as young as Bobby Slowick that's, at least in a short amount of time, it's shown that lineage and shown the ability as a play caller this year with C.J. Stroud that he can get it done. So I'm leaning Bobby Slowick as my pick.
Okay, I like it. Number two, if you do not land your top choice in Bobby Slowick, who are choices 2 and 3?
Well, see, I would talk to Jim Harbaugh. And first off, I wouldn't just give up on that. I'd talk to Bill Belichick, but I wouldn't necessarily want Bill Belichick. I'm going to go Brian Callahan as number 2, another young guy who's an offensive mind, who has done a good job with Cincinnati. I'm a little bit hesitant, though, because I feel like that's more Zach Taylor's offense. I give him a little more credit than Callahan on that one. But I'd go Callahan second. If Ben Johnson is in play, I think Ben Johnson's going to have a lot of demands for whatever job he takes. I don't think the Titans are going to jive with that. But let me reverse order. I'm going to go Ben Johnson from the Lions second, even though I don't think that's going to be a possibility for the Titans. I'll go Callahan third. So I'm going 1, 2, 3 offensive coordinators. Slowick, and then Ben Johnson, and then Callahan, 1, 2, 3 for the Titans.
I don't have a problem with that at all. Speaking of Jim Harbaugh, Tom Pelissero reports the Atlanta Falcons are scheduling a second interview with Jim Harbaugh for their head coaching position. There's a lot of smoke out there that Harbaugh may return to Michigan if they give him a contract which includes full immunity from anything that happens with the NCAA, which I can't imagine is going to happen. We've heard a lot about the Chargers. They've already gone through the 2 Rooney Rule interviews. They could hire Harbaugh tomorrow. They interviewed Mike Vrabel. And we've heard about the Falcons playing footsie with Belichick, including sending his plane up to go get him to bring him down to meet a second time with Arthur Blank. So, what do we make of Jim Harbaugh and the Falcons scheduling a second interview?
It's weird because it feels like this is a constant game of musical chairs. So we're trying to predict when the music stops, who's going to end up in what spots. I've just thought all along it's going to be Harbaugh in L.A. with the Chargers. It's going to be Belichick in Atlanta with the Falcons. I think the ultimate wild card is Washington, who I feel like would like either one of those guys because I feel like they kind of want a big name to go there. And maybe it's Mike Vrabel that ends up there, but they're very quiet right now on what's going on. I still think it's ultimately going to be Belichick in Atlanta and Harbaugh, the Chargers. I do not think Jim Harbaugh is coming back to Michigan. I know they're offering $12.5 million a year for 10 years. They're not going to do anything to him with the NCAA. I just feel like Jim Harbaugh, he scratched one itch. He went back to his alma mater. He did bad enough to take a pay cut at one point and then built it back up, started beating Ohio State with regularity and ended on a national championship. He wants to go out that way. I think he wants to do what his brother did against him and win a Super Bowl ring. I think it's more personal goal with that and proving he can do it in the NFL more than anything else. So I still think it's going to be Harbaugh with the Chargers and Belichick in Atlanta. Vrabel will get a job somewhere else. Maybe Seattle for Mike Vrabel could make some sense.
So I actually think that all of this, like Chargers, Harbaugh, Vrabel interviewing Chargers, Falcons, I think that right now the Chargers and Harbaugh are negotiating. And that what this all is it's all leverage, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll interview Mike Vrabel because we might hire Mike Vrabel when they don't want to hire Mike Vrabel. And he's like, okay, well, I'll go talk to the Falcons, and I might go back to Michigan. And it could be money, it could be power, I don't know. And I think the Falcons are probably doing the same thing with Bill because they have a GM and they have Rich McKay above the GM. And as we know, Belichick does not work well with others. So I think there may be some ironing out there that's going on as well. But maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist. Okay. Which game is the best game for this weekend of the NFL divisional round?
Well, it's Buffalo and Kansas City for a lot of obvious reasons. Just the role reversal of now that game being played in Orchard Park and not in Kansas City really gets me going. I like that facet of it. But Josh Allen's opportunity to get over the hump and get one step closer to getting that franchise to a Super Bowl, there's a reason that's the Sunday night game, which is always that Sunday late afternoon evening game, which is in the prime spot for that reason. I think the game that I'm most interested to watch, though, is Detroit and Tampa. This Detroit team, I love them. I love the story. I'd love nothing more now than to see a Detroit-Buffalo Super Bowl. Would be amazing to watch. But I think the atmosphere there is going to be on par with Buffalo. It's going to be great for that game. Is Baker Mayfield really this for real? I mean, you want to talk about a story arc that is different. I mean, this guy got thrown out for Deshaun Watson, a guy facing all the charges at the time. And here he is landing on his feet eventually in Tampa after a terrible time in Carolina. Did some okay things for Sean McVay with the Rams, but now resurgent here in the divisional round, played great against the Eagles. I'm really interested in that game. So I think 1-2 for me. Number 1, Chiefs, Bills. Number 2, Lions, Bucks.
Oh my God! I think it's Texans, Ravens. I think that I am so freaking fired up to watch that. Stroud, the way he's playing, Lamar, and all the pressure that's on Lamar after he got the contract. They're the Super Bowl favorites. Again, the stigma with Lamar is that he can't win in the playoffs. I think that Lamar versus the Texans is the game this weekend, but I am excited about those other games. Okay.
Well, you're a Louisville guy too, so
but I don't even like Lamar.
Jackson.
I root against Lamar. I guaranteed he won't get to an AFC title game, and I feel really bad about that.
Regardless, though, you've got interest there, whether you love him or you hate him. So that's why you're looking at that game more. I will say, though, I mean, that's one we don't often talk about Lamar Jackson not doing anything in the playoffs. We don't talk about it enough. Josh Allen's one that, hey, the next thing is get to a Super Bowl and win one. Lamar Jackson's the same way.
Yep.
Got to see him go and play well. I don't like them resting guys. I don't like the time off for the Ravens coming into this game. So, look, they're all good. Divisional round is the best NFL weekend of the year. So I love all these games. You can throw them in a hat and pick one out, and you're going to get a good one.
Should Nick Sirianni be fired?
Not right now, but there's a caveat to this because, and I've been talking about this all week, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, and I don't get a good answer to this simple question to Nick Sirianni, the simple question is this: what happened? What happened, Nick? Break that down for me. That quick, that simple. If he gives me a stammering answer that lays blame on everyone else and doesn't really, or gives me a non-answer, I'll probably fire the guy. If he can give me a clear, concise, here's where it was going right, here's where it went wrong, here's what we need to correct, here are a couple of changes we probably need to make this offseason, and we're going to be just fine because the roster is good. If I am satisfied with that answer, if I'm ownership, then I'm okay with him coming back. But he's got to have a good answer to that question. I don't think he deserves to be fired on its face, but if he doesn't have a good answer or understand what it is that went wrong, then he definitely needs to – they need to look elsewhere. I think he's going to be able to do that, though. We'll see, though, because it seems complicated to me. Roster's good. No big issues with Jalen Hurts. A lot of talk about A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown's one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's one of Jalen Hurts' best friends. So is this a friend problem with those two? They got to get to the bottom of it, and the defensive decisions they made did not work out.
Did Dan Quinn lose a head coaching job on Sunday?
I think he was losing or lost a job or two, but I think someone will hire him. I think there's probably a job or two that crossed him off the list that's not going to consider him anymore, but I think someone out there will hire him.
I am surprised by that. Last one. Do the Panthers end up with a respectable head coach?
Who was it that had Panthers last, Titans second to last?
Charles Robinson. They talked to 6. Yahoo Sports talked to 6 executives and coaches, and they ranked them. And of the 6, the Titans finished 6th of the 7 jobs, and one of them ranked the Panthers ahead of the Titans.
Yeah, that's bad. I wouldn't go that far. But I mean, ownership situation wise and the way it's gone the last year and a half, it's tough to argue that it's not 6 out of 7 when you look at those jobs. So I got no issue with that. Now, the question again, are they going to end up with
a respectable head coach?
Yeah, they will. Because, I mean, what's respectable in the NFL? They're going to hire some coordinator, right? They're just going to give someone an upgrade. There's going to be a coordinator that will take that job.
Shouldn't they hire Pete Carroll?
Oh, that'd be good.
Like, okay, I'm rich and I'm entitled and I don't know anything about football. So, Pete, you come in, you run the football, you show us the way and run it for 4 or 5 years and then turn it over to whoever and save the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, and I think that there's a number of jobs that if the ownership could swallow their pride and they understood their own situation enough and had self-awareness, they would go to a Jim Harbaugh and say, hey, be yourself. Do your thing. We saw you do it in San Francisco. Let's do it again here and kind of stay out of the way. I don't think that David Tepper is capable of doing that is the problem. He should. I'm with you. Go to a powerful coach like that and let them run your organization. Let them run things for you. They should absolutely do that. I just don't see Tepper being that kind of guy. So they're going to end up hiring a coordinator. And, I mean, it'll be respectable because no one's going to say, oh, they had to go hire a running backs coach that's been in the league for a year that no one ever heard of or anything like that. There's going to be a coordinator that will take that job.
Chad Withrow, as always, from Outkick, joining us for the hot seat. Chad, you may step down. Great stuff.
Always fun, Jared. Have a great weekend. Same to all your listeners.
Yep, Chad Withrow, as always. And he's on the Bobby Slowick train. And I really thought that the Bobby Slowick train was headed to the station. But perhaps it may get derailed. Window Nation will not get you derailed with the windows in your home. Replacing the windows in your home has never been more affordable or easier than you thought, especially with Window Nation's experts that know exactly what they're doing when it comes to replacing windows. Visit windownation.com. Feel your windows today because it is freezing cold outside. And if that window is freezing cold, it means it is not keeping the cool air out of your house. Those drafts come in through the windows that need to be replaced, and you got to crank that heat up, and you are going to be paying a fortune. So not only take care of that, but also you can update your windows, and it creates more bang for your buck when you turn to sell your home because the value it adds. That's right. Again, put those hands on those windows. But it has never been more affordable to replace your windows than it is right now with Window Nation, where you will get no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. Again, no interest for 5 years, 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. Simply call 866-90-NATION. That's 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com.
This group of coaches that are available may be the most accomplished ever, obviously led by Bill Belichick. Angelo, in your mind, if not Sirianni, who would you want to see coaching this team?
I have it. I have the name, and I love him. And he would fit here perfectly. Not Belichick. He's 72. He's as old as I am. He's done. All right? No. Mike Vrabel. Think it over. Defensive mind. I thought he was a very good coach at Tennessee, but he had horrible ownership. All right? So he didn't have any power over personnel. Here's the other thing, though. You bring in Vrabel. He'll fix that defense. I promise you he'll fix that defense immediately. And no more A.J. Brown problems. He and A.J. Brown were basically joined at the hip. When they were about to trade A.J. Brown from Tennessee here, Mike Vrabel went public and said, they'll do that over my dead body. And then they did it, and he didn't die, fortunately. But he, I'm telling you guys, that's the guy I want here. Now, it would require the owner, Lurie, and Howie Roseman to take a step back and bring in a man who actually really knows football. And Mike Vrabel would bring in a great staff, keep out of his way, and Mike Vrabel would fix A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts would be in a much better place, and the defense would be 10 times better than what you just saw. That's the answer.
Philadelphia radio legend Angelo Cataldi, who retired last year, calling into his old station, Sports Radio WIP in Philadelphia 94, saying, I've got the answers to fix the Eagles. Turn the entire organization over to Mike Vrabel. I promise you he'll have a great staff. Oh, boy. Let's talk about Craig Aukerman, Angelo. Jason Houdling as the offensive line coach. Now, I do think Nick Sirianni will keep his job. I am rooting for Nick Sirianni to keep his job, although Vrabel to the Eagles would be, so juicy. So juicy. So it is time for the first and maybe only ever edition of the Stillman and Company Coaching Carousel. We start with a job that before we came on the air was open. It is no longer open according to Adam Schefter, but this is what we were projecting.
Raiders.
Antonio Pierce. The fact is, Mark Davis didn't have a choice. Mark Davis moved off the interim coach who had won last time because I know better, and it was Josh McDaniels, which was an unmitigated disaster. Davante Adams would have requested a trade, and Max Crosby said he would have requested a trade if they did not hire Antonio Pierce. He's the next coach of the Raiders. That's easy.
Chargers.
Jim Harbaugh is going to the Chargers. The Chargers had two Fugazi Rooney Rule interviews with Leslie Frazier and was it David Shaw was the other one? I think so. Come on now. They're going to hire Harbaugh. Now, they're playing hardball. That's why they interviewed Mike Vrabel yesterday. That's why Harbaugh's scheduling a second interview with Atlanta. He doesn't want to go from Michigan to the Atlanta Falcons with no quarterback. He wants to go to the Chargers with Justin Herbert. It's a hardball negotiation. Either on one side it's money or it's power, but that's what's going on. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. He's not going back to college. He's not going to the Falcons. He's obviously not going to the Titans. It is Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Bam. Simple. It's obvious. It looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. Jim Harbaugh will be wearing his khakis in L.A.
Falcons.
Another one where, again, it looks like there's some hardball negotiating going on here. Bill Belichick's going to be the next coach of the Falcons. And Bill Belichick's going to be the next coach of the Falcons because Arthur Blank wants Bill Belichick to be the next coach of the Falcons. Let me just say this. I would not hire Belichick. I think the game is past him. I have no idea what his plan is on the offensive side of the ball. Bill O'Brien going to Ohio State yesterday, which I don't totally understand. Bill O'Brien going to Ohio State makes me wonder who's the offensive coordinator going to be. Is it going to be McDaniels? Who's the quarterback going to be in Atlanta? Is it going to be Ryan Tannehill? Like, seriously, I don't know. What's the answer? But the owner's old, and the owner wants Bill, and so the owner's going to get Bill. And the only real question I have right now is how much power does Bill get? Because right now they've got a GM, Terry Fontenot. They've got a president, Rich McKay, who used to be the general manager of the Buccaneers. He is very much involved in football. Bill does not play nice with others, but Belichick will be the next coach of the Falcons.
Seahawks.
I'm going to go with Mike Vrabel to the Seahawks, which I would hate because as much as I think everybody will be keeping up with Vrabel because he was immensely popular here, I just think the Seahawks are kind of a boring team. Like, if he goes to the Chargers with a quarterback, oh, my God. If he goes to the Eagles, oh, my God. Every day it would be like, Mike Vrabel's 5-1. Or if Vrabel stinks it up, and ha, ha, ha. So it's kind of like a we'll see moment here. But I think Vrabel will go to the Seahawks. I think Dan Quinn cost himself a head coaching job, specifically that one, with the performance last Sunday. I think that was so bad that even though we should not judge a guy off of one game, I do think that it will be hard for the Seahawks to be able to sell to their fans Dan Quinn after he blew the 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, after he could not build the Falcons back when Kyle Shanahan left, and what happened Sunday defensively, which was an unmitigated disaster. I would say, though, my dark horse for that job is Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. We've seen what he's done with Baker. He was the quarterback's coach there last year under Geno Smith. Probably keeps a lot of the coaches around if they do that. And you kind of stay within the family for John Schneider. But I'll go Vrabel. Adam Schefter said today, which I'd never heard, that Vrabel has a good relationship with John Schneider, the general manager. Keep that in mind. Vrabel to Seattle.
Commanders.
Ben Johnson. Now, I think people said, well, Washington wants a big name. But I don't think they do. I think Washington scratched the big name itch when they got Adam Peters out of San Francisco to be the general manager. And I know that, again, like Adam Peters, what's that mean to me? What's that mean to you? But in the NFL circles, like Adam Peters is considered as big of a part of the 49ers as John Lynch is. So this is a big get. Well, I don't see Adam Peters taking that job in Washington and then bringing in Bill Belichick, who's a bigger star than him, or Jim Harbaugh, who would demand more power than him. No. He's going to bring in a first-year guy, and he's going to say, hey, here, you work for me. Here's how we're going to do things. And Ben Johnson, who has these astronomical salary demands, will take it for one reason. The only other jobs available right now are the Panthers and the Titans. And he has not taken the Panthers job, and I do not think he has taken the Titans job. So it's like, okay, I'll go to Washington. I'll get Drake May. You work with me some on this, but you're the man in charge, Adam Peters. I think it'll be Ben Johnson with the Commanders.
Panthers.
So this is really hard because I don't think anybody wants to go to the Panthers, but I think somebody obviously will, and I think it'll be Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan is ready for a head coaching job. I know he doesn't call the plays in Cincinnati. That is not a prerequisite to landing a head coaching job. But with Brian Callahan, I think he's got enough new energy that will excite David Tepper. He's an offensive guy, which you know they're going to go for when it comes to Bryce Young. He's a McVay guy coming off of the branch that is Zach Taylor. And quite frankly, I think all the other better guys will turn him down. And so once they get turned down by all these people, it's like, okay, well, let's take somebody. It'll be Brian Callahan. I believe Pete Carroll should be the next coach of the Panthers. And I love how Belichick has all these landing spots. Like Atlanta's so desperate for Bill. And Harbaugh, who's apparently incredibly hard to work with, Harbaugh is penciled in at the Chargers. And if he doesn't go there, somebody else is going to hire him. But nobody's interested in Pete Carroll? I mean, I hate to say this, but him and Bill are basically the same age. He's got more energy, in my opinion, than Bill. He's been more successful lately than Bill. But I think Pete Carroll would be perfect for the Panthers. They fired the GM. They fired the coach. They are starting over. They've got a young quarterback. Bring in Pete and have Pete run the organization similar to what he did in Seattle. You do that, Pete probably brings in some young executive, probably somebody from Seattle, comes with him, and they're going to run that organization. And after about 3 or 4 years, Pete will be ready to retire. That young guy will be ready to take over. There'll probably be a coach in the pipeline. But bring some order and stability to the organization, and Pete Carroll does that. And yet I don't think Carolina, because their owner, he knows everything, I think he's not interested in Pete Carroll. But I think Pete Carroll would be, especially considering they got an undersized quarterback. It's like, who's the last undersized quarterback that had success? who coached them. Pete Carroll to the Panthers should happen. It'll be, though, Brian Callahan, which takes us to our final spot.
Titans.
I'm very nervous about this one, Ian.
Yep.
I'm very nervous.
It's growing. The nerves are growing.
Oh, it's growing. I woke up this morning thinking it was either going to be Brian Callahan or my choice on the coaching carousel, Bobby Slowick, as the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. If Bobby Slowick is announced the next head coach of the Titans, let me tell you this. There's a chance it doesn't work out. But I don't think that chance is very high. But today, Corey Curtis said he's got an inkling that it might be Aaron Glenn. Two people he trusted brought up Aaron Glenn's name to him. Makes me a little nervous. Then Cedric, one of our top callers, called in. Cedric had Ian go find a clip for him, which I actually thought was pretty, gutsy of Cedric. But this was the clip. This is what Aaron Glenn said today. And keep in mind everything you've ever heard out of Rand Carthon's mouth. This is what Aaron Glenn said today at his press conference.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about being a head coach just from being around him?
The number one thing I think is important is, just the collaboration with the GM and the owner and making sure that vision, that collective vision is the same. Because once that's intact and all three of you guys are saying, old women are saying the same thing, that feeds down to the staff, then feeds down to the players. And, they just hear the same vision over and over again. And you talk about culture. Culture is about people. And you bring the right people in, you can have the right culture.
Oh, no. But I think because they're so dedicated to Levis being successful, Amy, Rand, the next coach, that I think they'll hire the guru, and the guru is Bobby Slowick. So give me Bobby Slowick. That's the official coaching carousel. Again, Antonio Pierce is going to be the Raiders head coach. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Bill Belichick to the Falcons. Mike Vrabel to the Seahawks. Ben Johnson to the Commanders. Brian Callahan to the Panthers. Should be Pete Carroll. And Bobby Slowick to the Titans. Speaking of Bobby Slowick, he's got a big game tomorrow, and I am fired up. I'm going to have to pick this game, and we'll do it next. I don't know which way I'm going. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, I am excited for this weekend of football. I think we got some great games, specifically in the AFC. And yet last weekend was such a stinker with the big blowouts. I mean, it really wasn't as bad. Like, I didn't think it was that bad until everybody started talking about how bad it was. I mean, because I thought we saw, what we saw out of Bobby Slowick with the Texans. I signed me up for that. And then with what we saw out of the Cowboys, even though that was a blowout and it wasn't a big game, it was like such a meltdown with Dallas that it was must-watch television. But yeah, the games weren't very good until we got that Rams game. That Rams game was freaking awesome. The Rams and the Lions. So hopefully we'll have 4 good games. Ian, how'd we do last week?
3-3.
I'm surprised by that.
Yep. You missed Cleveland.
I did.
You got KC. That was free money, so you got that one correct.
I guaranteed that one.
Pittsburgh, you missed to
cover. I was so going to backdoor cover, too, and then it just...
Dallas, disappointment, 7. That was terrible. LA was, 3. That was a close one, so you got that. And Tampa, you called the Tampa win. So you got that one, too. So 3-3 for the season is now at 62, 58, and 2 on the season.
68-52.
62, 58, and 2.
Oh, so like the playoffs could tank us.
Yeah, I mean, you're 4 games above 500 right now, and there's 6 games left to go. Well, I guess 7 if you include the Super Bowl. So.
And then all the prop bets. Ian, let's go.
We will begin Saturday afternoon, 3:30, ESPN, ABC. The Texans at the Ravens, over/under. A little bit lower than I would think. Maybe weather here. 43.5. Baltimore.
Good defenses.
Baltimore minus 9.5.
Okay. First of all, I think it's great that Joe and Troy are calling this game because Joe and Troy are the best in the game right now, and I am going to go with the Texans. And I think the Texans are going to win. And I'm going to tell you why I think the Texans are going to win. Because the Texans' defensive front, we saw it against the Titans. Now we know that the Ravens block better than the Titans do. But the Texans' defensive front can be dominant. And I think that they will get to Lamar Jackson. And I don't care how fast you are or how much better of a passer he is or anything else. If you get pressure on the quarterback, you're going to give the quarterback a tough day. The Ravens rested their starters the last week of the year. Then they had last week off. The last time that happened, the Ravens rested their starters the last week of the year. RG3 played quarterback. They had a week off, and Derrick Henry walked in there and beat the crap out of them. I think that happens again. I think Slowick has a masterful game plan. I think Stroud throws the ball well. I think the line protects for CJ a little bit, and I think the Texans are going to win outright. Give me the Texans.
Okay, Saturday night on Fox, 7:15. Should be an interesting game to see if the Packers can keep it going here. Packers at the 49ers, over-under a little bit higher as we would expect of 50.5. Same spread, though, San Francisco minus 9.5.
I was going to go 13 was my number. If it was 13 or more, then I would go with Green Bay. I'm going to go with San Francisco. And I don't mean this to any disrespect to Green Bay because Jordan Love is playing great, but I think last week had to do more with Dallas. And just the fact that Dak chokes in big games, McCarthy chokes in big games, Dan Quinn chokes in big games, then it has to do with Green Bay's excellence. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's unfair. Shanahan does not lose in the divisional round of the playoffs. I'll take Shanahan at home. I'll take that defense. I think San Francisco wins easily.
Okay, the NBC game is not on Sunday night. It is actually 2 o'clock Sunday on NBC. Tampa Bay is going to Detroit to take on the Lions. Over-under 49.5 in the Dome. Detroit minus 6.5.
I'll take Detroit. I mean, this is a big spread, so I'm a little nervous. But I think the Rams might have actually been a tougher test for them. The one thing I will say about Tampa Bay that nobody talks about is we always talk about like that ACL year and how you come back off the ACL, but you're not the same until the next year. And I think that's happened to Chris Godwin. So those receivers, Godwin and Evans, are really good. But I do think that Detroit has too much firepower. I think that the Buccaneers win on Monday was more about the Eagles than it was the Bucs. Let's not forget they scored 9 points against the Panthers. I'll take Detroit.
Okay, that brings us to the final game. Should be a good one. Mahomes in his first official road game here of his playoff career. Chiefs at the Bills, 5:30 on CBS, over under 45.5. Buffalo -2.5.
I will take Buffalo. Now, I have no conviction behind this. I think this is going to be a great game. I'm so glad that it's being played in Buffalo because these two teams never play in Buffalo. They played 15 times in a row, and it's all in Kansas City. And so I think Buffalo's going to win, but I would be careful, though, of Josh Allen's turnovers. I mean, those can be a problem. They should have blown out the Steelers the other night, and they didn't really until it was late. It should have been a blowout in the first quarter. Kansas City looks like they're hitting a stride, but that was a warm-up game against Tua. I'll take Buffalo. That's it for us. Great week of shows, everybody. Stay safe out there. This ice is going to melt. It's going to get warm soon enough. ESPN Radio's coming up next. Have a great weekend of football. A big Preds game tomorrow. Stillman and Company. We will see you Monday at 2.